Chapter 1844. A majestic heavenly palace stood at the end of the stairway to heaven, emitting a mysterious and majestic light. This heavenly palace occupied a very large area, and could accommodate many people. Tang Zheng stood in front of the heavenly palace and pointed his finger. The door of the heavenly palace slowly opened. Whoosh! The wind and clouds surged between heaven and earth. The power of faith that was originally stored in the vast heaven and earth surged from all directions, converging into a torrent and rushing straight into the heavenly palace. This majestic power of faith was invisible to the naked eye, but many cultivators felt it. They widened their eyes and pricked up their ears in horror, not knowing what was going on. The power of faith gathered more and more in the heavenly palace and gradually manifested, turning into a cloud that floated at the top of the heavenly palace. Tang Zheng smiled with satisfaction and pointed to the power of faith that was still flowing endlessly into the heavenly palace, saying, "From now on you will bless the world and help the people of the world to become gods." Boom, 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 boom. The power of faith sounded as if it was responding to Tang Zheng. He turned and walked out of the heavenly palace, and saw many people running up the stairway to heaven. Bang! One of them fell on the stairway to heaven, and struggled to get up. However, he could not take another step forward, as if there was an invisible force blocking his way. Tang Zheng was not surprised and said loudly, "The stairway to heaven is very different from before. Every step represents a certain level of strength. If you have not reached the corresponding level of strength, you will not be able to climb the higher stairway to heaven." His voice was not loud, but it was like a moisturizing sound that clearly entered everyone's heart. When the crowd heard this, they gradually calmed down. Some were surprised and some were happy. Some of the powerhouses lifted their feet and ran to the higher stairway to heaven. Unknowingly, fewer and fewer people continued to climb the stairway to heaven. Tang Zheng watched this scene quietly and did not stop them. The strength of the group gradually became clear. The Emperor of Heaven took the lead and walked steadily, as if he was not affected by the stairway to heaven at all. Behind him was the Empyrean Fairy. She had the highest cultivation level among all the girls. Tian Chanzi was half a step behind Empyrean Fairy, followed closely by Li Xiaotian and Wu. The two of them had trained in martial arts since they were young, and were proficient in heavenly chess. They had long since become well-known martial artists, and many famous people were left behind by them. This included Wu Junshan and Lan Yu. The two of them were Tang Zheng's parents and had been famous for a long time. However, compared to the rising stars, they lacked the determination to forge ahead and also lacked the opportunity. Unknowingly, they were surpassed by the two of them. In the past, no one had noticed this, but now it was completely exposed on the stairway to heaven. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu glanced at each other. Surprise flashed in their eyes before they smiled in relief. The new generation excels the old, and they have a successor. This is a great blessing in life. Yi Dingdang and Nana walked side by side. Looking at the people in front of them, they clenched their teeth, as if they were suppressing their anger and fighting to be the first to rush in front of them. However, this was easier said than done. The two's breathing became hurried. "Nana, you're still so young. How can you be as strong as me?" Yi Dingdang rolled her eyes and said with grievance. Nana revealed a brilliant smile and said, "Sister Dingdang, Brother Tangzheng has always said that my talent is high. Perhaps this is the reason." Yi Dingdang snorted and muttered, "My talent is not low either." Mu Hongyan smiled, her face brimming with motherly radiance, and said, "Nana, don't argue with your Aunt Dingdang." "I'm not an aunt." Yi Dingdang's face was red as she argued. Mu Hongyan said, "Seniority is like this. You can't mess up seniority." "Then why does Nana call Brother Tangzheng and not him?" Yi Dingdang's eyes flashed mischievously as she turned around and smiled meaningfully at Mu Hongyan. Mu Hongyan's eyes flashed with a hint of shyness, but she immediately covered it up. The relationship between the girls and Tangzheng had long been an open secret. Everyone had also accepted this point. If they were to talk about seniority, Nana would probably have to call Tangzheng father. Feng Shirsher propped up her big belly and placed her hands on her hips. She was one step behind Mu Hongyan on the ladder. She pointed at Yi Dingdang and said, "Dingdang, stop teasing Sister Dingdang. Look, Nana is about to surpass you." Yi Dingdang cried out in alarm and said angrily, "Nana, you little girl, don't go. You want to surpass me while I'm chatting?" Immediately, it caused a string of bell-like laughter from Nan Nan. Lu Qingmei supported Feng Shishir and said, "Shishir, don't go up. You're about to give birth. Be careful not to disturb the baby." Feng Shishir smiled and shook her head saying, "It's fine. I also want to see how far I can go. Then I'll support you. Don't look down. It's too high." Lu Qingmei looked down and quickly retracted her gaze. She said with lingering fear. When the others heard this, they subconsciously looked down. It made them dizzy. Fortunately, they were no longer ordinary people. Otherwise, they would have been scared to death. This was truly above the 9 heavens. It was unknown how far away they were from the ground. Feng Shishir looked at Tang Zheng in front of the heavenly palace and said to herself, "I remember the first time I saw him. At that time he was inconspicuous. Who would have thought that today would come?" Lu Qingmei lifted the hair beside her ears. Her eyes were blurred and said, "Yes, who would have thought? Speaking of which, it was only a few years ago. Why does it feel like so many years have passed?" Feng Shishir sighed. "Because during this period of time, too many things have happened that overturned the whole world. That's why it gives people this feeling." Lu Qingmei pondered for a moment and nodded in agreement. That's true. There were still many people from the witch tribe on the stairway to heaven. They had followed Tang Zheng for a long time, and were no longer the same as before. They could also occupy a place on the stairway to heaven. Tang Zheng looked at this group of people, and could not help but feel gratified. This was only a part of his team. The world of spirits and souls, the sky beyond heaven, and the dragon tribe had not arrived yet. He did not know if they could climb up the heavenly palace with their strength. The Emperor of Heaven's steps were obviously heavier, and his speed slowed down. He raised his head and looked at Tang Zheng not far away with a complicated expression. Tang Zheng saw this scene and said loudly, "It's too tiring to climb the stairway to heaven like this. If you cultivate the new heavenly book, it will be twice the result with half the effort." Only a few people had seen the new heavenly book, and had not had time to spread it to others. The Emperor of Heaven and the few women had already experienced the profoundness of the new heavenly book. They immediately guarded their minds and cultivated the new heavenly book. Boom! There was a loud noise in the heavenly palace, as if something had been triggered. Pairs of eyes looked at the heavenly palace, but they could not see anything. Tang Zheng turned his head and saw a surge of faith power rushing out of the heavenly palace, and flying toward the people cultivating the new heavenly book on the stairway to heaven. It was as if they were enlightened and fell on the top of their heads. Immediately, their auras underwent a tremendous change. Once they cultivated the new heavenly book, they could really absorb the faith power freely. Tang Zheng was not surprised and smiled with relief. True knowledge came from practice. Although he knew that there was no problem with the new heavenly book, seeing it with his own eyes made him feel different. Chapter 1845. The Emperor of Heaven was only a few steps away from the celestial palace, but he seemed to be under heavy pressure. He walked with great difficulty, as if he was drunk and could fall off the celestial stairway at any time. Whoosh! The power of faith between heaven and earth surged toward the Emperor of Heaven like a tide. Like a whale sucking in water, he merged the power of faith into his body to resist the inexplicable pressure. Bang! He took another step and reached a new step. His cultivation level was soaring rapidly. He was originally in the saint realm, and was only one step away from becoming a god. But this step was an insurmountable gap. Many generations had not been able to cross this gap. But now it was different. He had hope. His eyes were firm. He gritted his teeth and growled. Bang! 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 He took several steps in a row. His footsteps became more and more stable. His aura was like a rainbow. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up with gratification. As expected of the Emperor of Heaven, as expected of the descendant of the Fu clan, the Emperor of Heaven looked at Tang Zheng, who was one step away. He took a deep breath and the space in front of him became a vacuum. His body rapidly expanded. Boom! He stepped on the ground and soared into the air. Like a cannonball, he crossed the last step of the celestial stairway and landed heavily in front of the celestial palace. Ha ha ha, congratulations. You have finally reached the celestial palace. You are the second person in the world to reach the celestial palace. Tang Zheng patted the Emperor of Heaven's shoulder and praised him. The Emperor of Heaven breathed heavily and calmed his surging emotions. A rare smile appeared on his face. It is not easy to finish the celestial stairway you built. Of course. Life is difficult. Nothing in the world is easy. Tang Zheng nodded and pointed at the celestial stairway that stretched to the top of Sky Mountain. I built the celestial stairway to train people's minds. Every step of the celestial stairway must be resisted by the corresponding pressure. Only then can one's cultivation be stable. Only by reaching the celestial palace can one have real hope of becoming a god. As for the celestial stairway, it is to lay a solid foundation for becoming a god. The Emperor of Heaven nodded thoughtfully. I have already ascended to the heavenly palace, but my cultivation is still at the Saint Plane. Should I continue to comprehend the great path in the heavenly palace and cultivate to become a god? That's right. This heavenly palace contains the power of faith that I gathered from all over the world. It's much stronger than the power of faith in other places. You can use it and integrate it into yourself. You can break through the final limit and cross the final gap. Then you can cultivate to become a god. Tang Zheng said seriously. The Emperor of Heaven's eyebrows twitched as he said, "You have created a grand event. From now on, the human world will no longer be the same as before." Tang Zheng smiled and said, "In the past, the human world was like a hunting ground. Humans were the prey that were reared in captivity. The Protoss were high above and were our masters. From now on, humans are their own masters. This is how it should be." The Emperor of Heaven blinked his eyes excitedly and put away his complicated feelings. Compared to Tang Zheng, his understanding of the world and his understanding of the past emperors of heaven were too low. Everyone in the world was inferior to Tang Zheng. He was very pleased that his daughter had found such a home. Then he could wholeheartedly cultivate and break through the final limit. Suddenly, a burst of noise came from the stairway to heaven. Tang Zheng's spirit moved and his expression changed slightly. Like a gust of wind, he disappeared from the heavenly palace. The Emperor of Heaven was shocked and hurriedly looked back. He saw that the stairway to heaven was slightly chaotic. Many people were gathered together, and Feng Shishir was in the middle. Her face was pained. She held her stomach with both hands and kept gasping for breath. Feng Shishir was about to give birth. The Emperor of Heaven was shocked. He didn't care about entering the heavenly palace. He saw that Tang Zheng had already rushed to Feng Shishir's side. Without any explanation, he picked her up and strode toward the heavenly palace. Feng Shishir's cultivation was not enough. When she climbed the rest of the stairway to heaven, the pressure of the sky poured down on her, blocking her progress. Tang Zheng's heart moved, and just as he was about to block the pressure, a boundless energy suddenly burst out from Feng Shishir's abdomen, firmly blocking the pressure that filled the sky, firmly protecting Feng Shishir. Tang Zheng was very surprised. He looked down at her abdomen. The majestic energy came from the bulging lower abdomen. "Child, is that you?" Tang Zheng was surprised and happy. He never thought that a baby in the womb would have such energy. Moreover, it was his child. Feng Shishir frowned. She also noticed this. She lowered her eyes and looked at her stomach. Her stomach was beating slightly. That was the baby's fetal movement. The Celestial Emperor stood in front of the Celestial Palace and also saw this scene. His heart was filled with shock as he muttered to himself, "A little baby in the mother's womb already has such divine power. Then what kind of magic will it be after it is born? When it grows up, what kind of achievements will it achieve?" He didn't dare to imagine. Tang Zheng has already become a god, and this child is the son of God. He sensed something and suddenly raised his leg. Unknowingly, a five-colored auspicious cloud had appeared above the celestial palace. It was unknown when it had gathered. The birth of the Son of God is a natural phenomenon. Ah! Suddenly a heart-wrenching scream resounded through the sky, interrupting everyone's thoughts. Feng Shishir was already having contractions. She was in so much pain that she wanted to die. This scream made everyone's hearts clench. "Shishir, hold on." Yi Dingdang rushed forward. However, she stumbled and fell on the stairway, unable to move forward. The other girls also tried to catch up, but they all failed. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu were burning with anxiety, but they couldn't catch up or help. Tang Zheng didn't even look back. He said in a deep voice, "Don't panic. I'm here. I'll ensure the safety of the mother and child." Not only was Tang Zheng's medical skills superb, but he also had divine power. He wasn't flustered at all. Instead, he chose a place to give birth. The heavenly palace was the most suitable. He also didn't expect that the heavenly palace, which was a holy land for human cultivation, would become a delivery room first. The pressure on the stairway was completely blocked by the baby in the womb. The two of them ascended the heavenly palace. The Emperor of Heaven hurriedly greeted them. "What do you need me to do?" Tang Zheng shook his head. "I'll only delay you for a while. Guard outside the heavenly palace. Sure will go inside to give birth first. Okay. With me here, no one will be able to barge in and disturb you." Rumble. The gates of the heavenly palace slowly opened. After Tang Zheng and Fang Shisher entered, they quickly closed again, cutting off the Emperor of Heaven's line of sight. The Emperor of Heaven was envious. He looked at the multicolored clouds gathering at the top of the heavenly palace. Time passed minute by minute. The heavenly palace and the stairway were completely silent. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the heavenly palace and the multicolored clouds. Boom! Suddenly, a thunderous roar came from the multicolored clouds. A golden bolt of lightning flew out from the clouds and disappeared into the heavenly palace. Immediately after, multicolored light descended from the sky and bathed the heavenly palace. The multicolored light also disappeared into the heavenly palace. All kinds of strange phenomena came one after another. It was like a wonderful show they had never seen or heard of before. It was an eye-opener for everyone. The girls were especially envious. They all knew that the divine sunborn here was extraordinary. Wow. Chapter 1846. This cry reverberated through the mountains, across the ocean, and spread to the north and south of the Yangtze River. Countless people raised their heads and pricked up their ears. They looked at the heavenly palace and the stairway to heaven above the 9 heavens while quietly listening to the cry. The cry came from the heavenly palace. Countless people noticed this, and their expressions became complicated. Although they didn't know what happened, they could vaguely guess that a baby was born in the heavenly palace. The heavenly palace was a miracle. This was unheard of and shocked everyone's heart. Whose child was this? Whose child could enjoy such an honor? Whose child could be so miraculous? The 5 colored clouds above the 9 heavens explained everything. This child was definitely not an ordinary person. Or rather, he was not an ordinary person. Tang Zheng. This name appeared in everyone's mind. These people had never seen Tang Zheng before, but his figure appeared in their minds. Only Tang Zheng could build the heavenly palace, and only his child could do this. Tang Zheng was the savior of the world. Originally, there were people who were jealous of this child, but at this moment, there was only heartfelt blessings. Many people raised their hands and silently prayed. On the stairway to heaven, everyone heard the cry. The people who were originally discussing and worried immediately fell into a deathly silence. Everyone looked at each other, and their expressions gradually changed. Then they were filled with joy. She gave birth, Shisher gave birth. Yi Dingdang was so happy that he jumped 3 feet high and almost fell off the stairway to heaven. He couldn't stop cheering. The others also cheered. That's great, she finally gave birth. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at each other and revealed gratified expressions. They muttered to themselves, "Our son has a descendant. We're going to be grandparents." The two held each other's hands and were filled with emotion. Is it a boy or a girl? Yi Dingdang tilted his head and guessed in distress. I hope it's a girl. Then she can play with me. Nana said in a childish voice. What if it's a boy? Yi Dingdang sang the opposite tune. Nan Nan pursed her lips unhappily. Mu Hongyan stroked her daughter's hair and said patiently, Nana, a boy can play with you too. When you grow up, he can even protect you. Nana snorted and waved her pink fists saying, I'm so powerful, I don't need his protection. Besides, he's younger than me, so it's more appropriate for me to protect him. Nana has grown up and knows how to protect others. You have to protect your mother in the future, Mu Hongyan said with a smile. Of course. Nana nodded seriously. Everyone laughed and laughed, but they couldn't help but look at the heavenly palace. The Emperor of Heaven stood in front of the heavenly palace. He wanted to go in and take a look, but in the end he couldn't stop himself. He asked loudly, "Tangzheng, is there anything I can help you with?" "No need." Tangzheng's voice sounded full of joy. The voices of the two entered everyone's ears, and they all breathed a sigh of relief. They could only look forward, unable to take their eyes off the heavenly palace. In the heavenly palace, Tangzheng held a baby in his hands. It was surprisingly cute. Tangzheng raised his head to take a look, and couldn't help but recall the scene when the child was born. Not only did the multicolored auspicious clouds descend from the 9 heavens, even the power of faith spiraling in the heavenly palace poured down like a tide, pouring into the baby's body. It had to be said that Tangzheng was also shocked by this scene. He knew very well what it meant for a baby to have such a vision as soon as it was born. Previously, when the baby was still in Feng Shishir's stomach, it was able to withstand the pressure of the stairway to heaven. This was enough to show how extraordinary the baby was. Now that he saw this scene, Tangzheng deeply realized that the miracle of the baby was probably beyond his expectations. The baby slowly opened its eyes, and a bright light flashed in its big clear eyes. It actually gave Tangzheng a brilliant smile. Looking at the baby's smile, Tangzheng's heart seemed to melt. "Shishir, look at our child's smile." Tangzheng held the baby in front of Feng Shishir. Although Feng Shishir was very tired, her face was full of motherly radiance. "Is it a boy or a girl?" Feng Shishir reached out and held the baby in her arms and asked. "A boy," Tangzheng replied. Feng Shishir lowered her head and looked at the baby in swaddling clothes, and said softly, "Our son." Tangzheng hugged Feng Shishir's shoulder and kissed her forehead, saying, "Shishir, it's been hard on you." Feng Shishir leaned in his arms and said, "Seeing our son, all of this hard work was worth it." "Who do you think our son looks like?" Tangzheng asked. Feng Shishir carefully looked at it for a while and said, "His mouth and nose are like yours." Tangzheng smiled and said, "His eyes are like yours. They're big and beautiful, and they even have double eyelids, haha." After a slight pause, Tangzheng said, "This kid combines the strengths of both of us. He's even more handsome than his father." "Isn't this how it should be?" Feng Shishir said coquettishly. Tangzheng chuckled and said, "Of course. The pupil surpasses the master. At least from the moment he was born. It shows that he's stronger than his father." Feng Shishir's mouth curved into a smile. She was also shocked by the phenomenon just now and asked nervously, "Is there a problem with our son?" "No problem, our son is very good." Feng Shishir was relieved. Looking at the much thinner power of faith in the celestial palace, she asked, "Our son has attracted so much power of faith, and he's so young. Is there really no problem?" Tangzheng shook his head firmly and said, "Our son has completely integrated and digested the power of faith. He's my son, so he's the Son of God. He really lives up to the name of the Son of God. He was born with a cultivation of the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm." What? Feng Shishir herself had not reached the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm, but her son had this cultivation as soon as he was born. It was better than countless people who cultivated for a lifetime. Feng Shishir stared at her son in a daze, half believing and half doubting, but hearing Tangzheng say these words, she had no choice but to believe him. She muttered to herself, "Our son is so powerful. Ha ha ha, no matter how powerful he is, he's still our son." Tangzheng laughed heartily. He stretched out his finger and teased his son's little hand. His son giggled. However, the next second, his son's mouth flattened and he began to cry again. His little finger pushed Tangzheng's hand as if he wanted to push him away. Bang! Tangzheng's body shook a few times. His expression suddenly changed and he exclaimed, "He's really my son." "What's wrong?" Feng Shishir asked. "Shishir, you have to keep an eye on him in the future. His starting point is too high and his cultivation is too strong. His every move seems to be instinctive, but it has great power. If you don't pay attention, he will hurt others," Tangzheng said earnestly. Feng Shishir understood immediately. She looked at her son, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, and said, "Then what should we do?" I will find a way to temporarily seal his power. Otherwise, the people around him will be in danger, Tang Zheng said with a smile. That's good. Fang Shishir breathed a sigh of relief. Let's go out. The others have been waiting for a long time. They must be worried about you and your son. Tang Zheng supported Fang Shishir. Fang Shishir carried her son and walked out. Chapter 1847. The family of three walked out of the heavenly palace. The Emperor of Heaven was the first to see them. He hurriedly greeted them and asked, "How is it?" His gaze was involuntarily attracted to the infant in swaddling clothes, because he was like a bright star in the dark night. He was too attractive. The Emperor of Heaven's heart trembled. His breathing quickened as he said in disbelief, This. He stuttered for a long time before exclaiming, "It's incredible, the Mahayana realm." The Emperor of Heaven also saw the infant's cultivation. He had never seen or heard of someone who was so powerful at birth. Tang Zheng patted the Emperor of Heaven's shoulder and said, "He's my son." The Emperor of Heaven suddenly raised his head and stared at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. He came back to his senses. That's right, this was Tang Zheng's son, the first person since ancient times. His son was naturally extraordinary. Tang Zheng supported Fang Shishir and walked up the stairway to heaven, leaving the Emperor of Heaven to digest the shock in his heart. On the stairway to heaven, everyone was already looking forward. When they saw the three of them, they rushed up at the same time, but the invisible pressure on the stairway to heaven stopped them. The Empyrean fairy Fu Yao was the first to approach the two. She looked at the infant in swaddling clothes. With just a glance, she was stunned like her father. "I want to see the baby, I want to see the baby." Nana leaped up and quickly pounced over. Mu Hongyan hurriedly stopped her. "Nana, be careful, don't touch the baby." Nana turned a deaf ear and flew over like a cannonball. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up into a smile. Taking advantage of the situation, Nan steadily stopped in front of him and said, Nan, don't scare this baby." Nana smiled and shook her head. "I won't." She stuck out her little head and looked at the infant in swaddling clothes with her big black eyes. She tilted her head in surprise and said, "So small. When you were born, you were also this small." "Really?" Nana turned to look at her mother. Mu Hongyan said with a smile, "Babies are born very small." Nana was suddenly enlightened and exclaimed, "How magical! Can I touch it?" "Be careful," Fang Shishir reminded him. She had already seen her son's strength, so she had to be careful. Nana said innocently, "I won't hurt the baby." She reached out and took the baby's little hand. Suddenly, bang! Nana was like a kite with a broken string. She screamed and flew out. Ah! This scene gave everyone a fright. Mu Hongyan turned pale with fright and shouted, "Nana." The others were originally worried that Nana didn't know the severity of the situation and hurt the baby, but they didn't expect that she would fly out instead. Clearly, she had been sent flying by a force. Who could it be? The answer was obvious. Whoosh! Everyone's eyes fell on the swaddling clothes. Could it be this little one? No matter how they thought about it, it was impossible. After all, he had just been born. Nana had a famous teacher to guide her, and she was extremely talented. How could she be sent flying by a newborn baby? But the truth was right in front of them, and they had to believe it. Tang Zheng grabbed at Nana in midair, and Nana flew back and landed steadily in front of him. Nana was still in shock. She stared at the baby in a daze and said, "The baby is too powerful." Once this was said, everyone's guess was confirmed. Everyone's expressions became even more interesting. They all came up and asked at once, "Is the baby really that powerful? Wasn't he just born? Yet if he's so powerful from the moment he was born, how can others live?" Yi Dingdong's head was the first to come over. She was very close to the baby, and they stared at each other. The baby giggled. Yi Dingdong's heart seemed to melt. She giggled and said, "Too cute. Look, he's smiling at me." Fang Shishir could not help but laugh and said, "Ding Dang, he really likes you." "Of course." Yi Ding Dang raised her head like a proud white swan. She proudly said, "I am loved by everyone. Flowers bloom when they see me. This little fellow has good taste." Wu Li Xiaotian and Lu Qingmei curiously squeezed over. They pushed Yi Dingdang to the side and said, "Don't hog it all to yourself. We also want to see." Yi Dingdong's mouth twitched, but she was helpless. 3 pairs of eyes met the baby's eyes. Immediately, they were lost in his pitch-black eyes. It was as if they were placed in a warm sunlight. Hoo-hoo-hoo. The 3 of them regained their senses and looked at each other. They revealed a shocked expression and said to themselves, "Do you guys feel it? I almost lost myself in his eyes." "Yes, those eyes are too mesmerizing. Can we also take a look?" Wu Junshan and Lan Yu squeezed over and said hesitantly. Tang Zheng had already reconciled with his parents. He said with a smile, "Of course." The 3 girls retreated. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu excitedly looked at the baby. When they finally saw the baby's appearance, hot tears flowed down their cheeks. Feng Shishir felt something and held Lan Yu's hand, saying, "Don't be sad. Look, the baby is smiling at you." Lan Yu made a sound and wiped away her tears. She revealed a kind smile and said, "The little fellow is really smiling at us. Junshan, don't you think he looks like your son when he was just born?" Wu Junshan excitedly nodded and said, "Yes, very similar." Tang Zheng touched his face and said, "Really? I don't even remember what I looked like when I was young." Lan Yu looked at her son and then at the baby and said, "I will remember your appearance when you were born." Suddenly, Wu Junshan's eyes trembled and gradually revealed a look of disbelief. It was obvious that he had also seen some clues. "The baby is a bit different," Tang Zheng admitted. "Yes, he was born in the Mahayana realm." Ah. Everyone was originally just guessing, but now that Tang Zheng confirmed it, they all cried out in surprise. Yi Dingdang pouted with incomparable grievance and said, "Mahayana realm, I worked day and night, diligently studying and training, but still haven't reached this realm. He was actually so powerful from the moment he was born. This is too much of a bully." Nana nodded in agreement. "That's right, this is too much of a bully. You're afraid that I'll hurt the baby, but it's clearly the baby who will hurt me." Looking at the 2 of them, they couldn't help but burst into laughter. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu came back to their senses and smiled happily, saying, "Mahayana realm is good, Mahayana realm is good." "Right, is it a boy or a girl?" "A boy." Nana pouted and became even more depressed. "Why isn't it a little sister?" "Have you given her a name?" Wu Junshan asked. Tang Zheng and Feng Shishir looked at each other and were startled. The 2 had considered this before, but in the end, they couldn't think of a suitable name. Now that their son was born, the 2 of them didn't have time to think about it. Tang Zheng looked at Wu Junshan's eager eyes and realized a problem that he had neglected for a long time. His surname was Tang, and his father's surname was Wu. Wu Junshan never mentioned changing Tang Zheng's surname to Wu, but he was definitely looking forward to it. Chapter 1848. Hearing the name Tang Wu, Wu Junshan and Lan Yu understood Tang Zheng's intentions. Although Tang Zheng's surname was Wu, Tang Dahai raised him, and he chose to inherit Tang Dahai's surname and pass it down. However, he could not forget his biological father, so he named his first child Wu to reinforce his father's feelings. In addition, the word Wu had a profound meaning. Tang Zheng was a cultivator, and many people around him were also cultivators. Perhaps he wanted his son to be both a cultivator and a cultivator. This was also a beautiful wish of his. After he cultivated to become a god, he gradually realized that regardless of whether it was a cultivator or a cultivator, they would all end up in the same place. In the end, they would all be able to walk a broad path. The difference between a cultivator and a cultivator was just that many people subconsciously drew a line between them. One day this line could be broken. Everyone surrounded the porcelain baby and looked at him nonstop. Yi Dingdang was delighted and wanted to hug Tang Wu, but she was flustered. Everyone laughed and Yi Dingdong's face turned red. She pouted and said, "Don't laugh at me. If it were you, wouldn't you be the same as me? He's so small. I'm afraid of hurting him. He's in the Mahayana realm. How could you hurt him?" Yi Dingdong's face turned bitter and said indignantly, "You're such a bully. You bully me since you came out of your mother's womb." Feng Shishir's body emitted a motherly radiance. She pulled Yi Dingdong's hand and said softly, "Dingdang, you should give birth to one soon." Then the children will have companions. Yi Dingdang lifted her head and stared at Tang Zheng, feeling wronged in her heart as she thought. This isn't just my problem. I tried my best, but I just couldn't get pregnant. Tang Zheng smiled bitterly and shook his head. He said to the Emperor of Heaven, Emperor of Heaven, the heavenly stairway and heavenly palace have been built. I'll have to trouble you to spread the new heavenly book. I want the world to change greatly. Yes. The Emperor of Heaven gladly accepted the order. Tang Zheng waved his hand. Everyone felt the scenery in front of them change. They had left Heavenly Palace and returned home. In the following days, the world had undergone earth-shattering changes. The new heavenly book had been spread. High officials and nobles to the common people could all cultivate the new heavenly book. The new heavenly book was like an encyclopedia. Everyone could absorb nutrients from it. In addition, everyone understood the heavenly stairway and heavenly palace. So it turned out that Tang Zheng had spent a lot of effort for the sake of the people of the world, and actually created such a magnificent feat to benefit all living things. Many people swore that they would work hard to cultivate the new heavenly book, and then climb the stairway to heaven. There were many powerful cultivators in the world. Although they knew that the stairway to heaven was a huge test, some still tried to climb the stairway to heaven. However, it was too difficult for these people to climb the heavenly stairway. They gave up halfway, and did not reach the heavenly palace because their strength had not reached the corresponding realm. After the news spread, everyone realized that the rumors were true. The heavenly stairway and heavenly palace were not easy to climb. If one was lucky or underestimated them, they would fall. As a result, the people of the world busied themselves with cultivation, and enjoyed it even more. Because everyone in the world was cultivating, many things in the world had undergone subtle changes. For example, people found that many supernatural powers could be used in daily production and life. After cultivation was no longer high and mighty, supernatural powers also shed their unattainable appearance and integrated into all aspects of life and work. For example, farmers used supernatural powers to rain and irrigate their fields. Teleportation formations greatly reduced the cost of transportation. People did not necessarily choose to travel by car or plane. The number of people who flew on flying devices increased day by day. There were advantages and disadvantages to this. Many people with bad intentions also used supernatural powers to commit crimes. Therefore, new police officers appeared. These people all had extraordinary realms and supernatural powers to fight against new types of crimes. Tang Zheng's pioneering work had changed too much. As time passed, the impact would be greater and greater. Tang Zheng had already expected this. He did not hide his illness for fear of treatment, because the advantages outweighed the disadvantages. This was the inevitable trend and choice of the world's development. He moved with the trend. Therefore, even if there were various problems, this change was successful and there was no way to stop it. Many smart people saw some clues from Tang Zheng's various actions. He had spent so much effort to change the world. There must be a deeper reason. Everyone was a cultivator. The human world was more stable. It was a real big world. No one could shake this. By downgrading the human world to a small world, the possibility of the human world being annihilated was avoided. This series of events indicated that the human world might face an unprecedented threat. Therefore, Tang Zheng changed the world in order to deal with the possible threat one day. What was the threat? Tang Zheng took it so seriously. Many people came to inquire about the news, but Tang Zheng avoided talking about it. They could only speculate. Tang Zheng was not deliberately keeping people in suspense. The matter of the divine race was too outrageous. If at this time, people knew that the human world was a hunting ground created by the divine race, and that even humans were prey for the divine race to seize the power of faith, it would be a huge blow to humans. In time, humans would become stronger and stronger. Even if the truth was exposed, humans would not be so afraid because everyone could cultivate to become gods. The divine race would no longer be high and mighty. At the same time, the new heavenly scripture had also reached the ghost realm. After Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva had comprehended the new heavenly scripture, his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. Many new contents had been added to the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva Sutra. Both the human world and the ghost world were undergoing earth-shaking changes. The ghost world was originally a small world. When the ghost world cultivated the new heavenly book, its strength increased, and the ghost world also underwent a huge change. The ghost world broke its own shackles and changed from a small world to a big world, escaping the risk of annihilation. When Dizong of Goguryeo discovered this, he was surprised and happy. According to his understanding, the ghost world had to absorb the power of the human world to become a big world. However, the new heavenly book broke the shackles. The ghost world welcomed a new life. The sky beyond heaven and the dragon realm also welcomed the new heavenly book. There were many masters in these two worlds, and their understanding of the new heavenly book was deeper than ordinary people in the human world. They understood that it was a treasure that could complete their own transformation. The dragon clan boasted of being divine beasts, but there was still a gap between them and a real god. The new heavenly book could make up for this gap. Therefore, the dragon clan all comprehended the new heavenly book. Tang Zheng's reputation in the dragon realm reached its peak. The dragon clan also gradually developed faith and worship in him. The dragon clan's power of faith also passed through the spatial restriction between the two worlds and flew into the heavenly palace. In the sky beyond heaven, there was Xiaobai's publicity and promotion. The new heavenly book and Tang Zheng's prestige were more prosperous than the dragon clan's. Naturally, there was also new power of faith integrated into the heavenly palace. The power of faith from different races in the four worlds benefited even Tang Zheng a lot. His power was still increasing by leaps and bounds. Chapter 1849. Time flew. This world was no longer what it used to be. Tang Zheng bade farewell to his family and came to the front of the heavenly palace. He saw that there were already many figures on the stairway to heaven. Not only were there humans, but there were also other races. The dragon clan was particularly conspicuous among them. The dragon clan had always been powerful and had a higher starting point than the humans. Therefore, many of the dragon clan had climbed the sky stairway to comprehend the great Tao and absorb the power of faith in the heavenly palace. Many from the beyond heaven also came. They stood on the stairway and looked at the heavenly palace from afar. Their eyes were burning as they stared at Tang Zheng. Of course, there were also many creatures from the ghost realm standing on the stairway to heaven. In the past, the creatures from the ghost realm could not stay in the human world for a long time in broad daylight. Now it was completely different. Tang Zheng used his great divine power to transform the spirit qi of Heavenly Mountain and introduced the yin qi. This yin qi was not harmful to humans, but it was a guarantee for the lives of the living beings in the ghost world. A spatial passageway was established between the world of spirits and the human world. The experts in the world of spirits could use the passageway to reach the Sky Mountain, the Sky Stairway, and the Wangtian Palace. However, their activities were limited to the Heavenly Mountain area, and they would not cause any harm to the human world. Besides, now that the two worlds were on good terms with each other, no one would dare to commit crimes and stir up conflicts. Many pairs of eyes stared at Tang Zheng in front of the heavenly palace. All the races were in an uproar. God! Savior! Everyone exclaimed at once, unable to conceal their pleasant surprise. Tang Zheng had a lot of identities and a lot of fame. Tang Zheng looked at the various races with a smile and said in a clear voice, "Everyone, cultivation is like sailing against the current. If you don't advance, you will fall behind. I have already paved a broad path for everyone, but this path is also full of thorns. You still need to cut through the thorns to reach the heavenly palace and cultivate to become gods." His voice was loud and clear, clearly entering everyone's ears, shaking their hearts. "We will definitely live up to your expectations. That's right, we will definitely train with our lives on the line. The celestial palace is mine. I will definitely become a god, just like you. You are my idol." Cheers and shouts resounded throughout the heavens and earth. Tang Zheng nodded in relief and slowly rose from the heavenly palace. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he soared straight up and disappeared above the 9 heavens. Above the 9 heavens, there was a weak spatial fluctuation. Tang Zheng disappeared. He had left the mortal world. There wasn't much of a disturbance. To him, traversing through space was as easy as lifting a hand. However, traveling through space this time was not easy for him, which could be seen from the serious expression on his face. Because he was going to a new world. Deity world. Back then, Yuanying's avatar had left him and headed straight for the God realm. Now he was going to do the same as Yuanying's avatar and head for the God realm. The God race of the God realm had already arrived in the human world and was exterminated by Tangzheng. The God race would not remain indifferent. Tangzheng would not remain indifferent and wait for death. Taking the initiative to attack was the way of the king. Moreover, the human world was no longer in danger. With the new heavenly book, the heavenly stairway, and the heavenly palace, the expansion of the human world was just around the corner. Therefore, he had to go to the God realm personally to find out the truth of the God race. Only by knowing oneself and knowing one's enemy would one be able to fight 100 battles without hesitation. Yuanying's avatar had stirred up trouble in the God realm and caused the God race to suffer. He did not believe that he could not do this. After discussing with his family, he left resolutely. The space crack was still pitch black. If one was not careful, they would get lost in it. Tangzheng searched for a subtle feeling in the unseen world and stopped steadily at a place. He pointed his finger forward, and a ray of light appeared in the pitch-black space crack. Then a space door slowly opened. He stepped through the door leisurely and the darkness behind him disappeared. His eyes suddenly opened up and a glaring light hit him in the face. Tangzheng's pupils shrank as he looked in front of him in disbelief. What entered his eyes was a scorched earth with black smoke rising in spirals, as if a great battle had just taken place. He raised his head again and saw that there were actually 2 suns in the sky. No wonder they were so glaring. The terrifying heat was roasting the earth. This was like hell. The environment was more than 100 times worse than the human world. Is this the God realm? Shouldn't the God realm be a paradise with birds chirping and flowers fragrant? Why is the environment so bad? The immortals are too miserable. Tangzheng scratched his head and was very puzzled. Did I come to the wrong place and go to another world? He pondered for a while and rejected this idea. He was already a god and his connection with this world was very stable. He was sure that this was the so-called God realm. Seeing is believing. I'm really disappointed. Tangzheng shook his head. Just as he was hesitating and did not know what to do, there was a change in the sky. He hurriedly looked up and saw a sun slowly hiding in the sky. Finally, it disappeared completely as if it had never appeared. There was only one sun left in the sky. The temperature returned to normal and was no longer scorching. The black smoke on the scorched earth dissipated. What's going on? Tangzheng was puzzled and looked at the sky in a daze. After a while, he shook his head and left the place as fast as lightning. This scorched earth covered the aurora, but Tangzheng finally came to the edge of the scorched earth. The scorched earth and the outside world seemed to be 2 completely different worlds. There was a clear boundary separating the 2 places. There were no living creatures on the scorched earth and it was lifeless, but the outside world was full of vitality. He crossed that clear boundary and the air changed. The fresh air and the rich spiritual energy made him feel refreshed. Birds chirped and flowers fragrant, full of vitality. This was in line with Tangzheng's imagination of the God realm. But when he looked back, the endless scorched earth was so real. It was especially dazzling. The 2 lands were presented in front of him, and it was very confusing. Let's find a god first. Maybe I can solve this puzzle. He rose into the air and turned into a ray of light, flying forward. As far as his eyes could see, Tangzheng was once again shocked. Mountains rose and fell, layer upon layer, creating a scene of a paradise. Suddenly, an ancient city jumped into his sight. An endless stream of figures were coming in and out of the city gate. This god realm is like the human world of ancient times. It still maintains the most ancient appearance. There is no sign of modern human technology. Actually, this is normal. The gods are high and mighty. Why would they need technology? They don't need to worry about it. As for humans, because their individual strength is too weak, they try to develop technology to solve problems in life. But those coming in and out don't seem to be gods. Tangzheng was puzzled. He didn't feel the aura of the gods from those people. Instead, they seemed to be humans. This was very different from what Tang Zheng had imagined. He decided to blend in and find out the truth. His figure flashed and he landed in the air. He quietly blended into a large group and walked toward the city gate. Pairs of eyes looked at him, but they didn't make a fuss. They treated him like air. Chapter 1850. The city gate was tall, and the city walls were impregnable. There was actually a formation hidden inside, and normal attacks could not break the city walls. Tang Zheng looked at it a few more times in surprise. The divine realm was indeed different. Even the city walls were poles apart from the human world city walls. Not only the city walls, what attracted Tang Zheng the most was the row of heads hanging high above the city gate, fluttering in the wind. These heads were clearly the heads of cultivators, and there was still a remnant of the cultivators' power in them. This scene was exceptionally terrifying. Tang Zheng observed the cultivators around him, and found that they looked up with fear, then immediately looked away, afraid that others would notice. What did these beheaded cultivators do to end up in such a miserable state? Tang Zheng pondered. Seeing the reactions of the people around him, he was not in a hurry to ask. The divine realm was too unfamiliar to him, and the dangers were unpredictable. He decided to be invisible, see more, think more, and do less. A tall and mighty man stood on the city gate with an axe in his hand, looking down at the cultivators walking through the gate. He was overbearing and directly threatened them. You cultivators, listen well. This is the outcome of anyone who dares to collude with foreign enemies. Going against the divine race, I don't know what they are thinking, to do such a suicidal thing. Going against the divine race? Tang Zheng pricked up his ears and heard these few important words. There were also cultivators in the divine realm, who dared to go against the divine race. It seemed that not only him, but there were also people in the divine realm who were dissatisfied with the divine race. If he could find these people, he would have a deeper understanding of the divine realm. He looked at the big man again, and thought that this was also a human, only in the Mahayana realm, but he was so overbearing, relying on the divine race behind him. There was no doubt that many humans in the divine realm were the lackeys of the divine race. The crowd of cultivators walked through the city gate without a word, and the bustling scene in the city hit them in the face. Tang Zheng opened his eyes wide and looked around. This city was exceptionally lively. There were all kinds of shops, and the goods in the shops were dazzling. They were not ordinary things, but treasures, refining materials, and even secret books for cultivation. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up as if he had discovered a new continent. This was truly a world that was completely different from the human world. He felt that this was a novel experience as he paced back and forth in front of each shop. The mysterious heavenly divine skill, a Saint Realm secret manual, one of the most powerful cultivation methods under the immortal realm. The price is fair, and the price is fair. The holy beheading saber is powerful enough to kill saints. There's only one of it in the entire God realm. If you miss this opportunity, you won't be able to find it again. The waiters in each shop shouted with all their might, which made Tang Zheng dumbfounded. The other practitioners were already used to it. With indifferent faces, they left in a hurry. Why didn't they even take a look at such a powerful secret treasure? Could it be that they're too knowledgeable and have long turned a blind eye to these treasures? Tang Zheng mumbled inwardly. Seeing Tang Zheng stop in his tracks, the waiter's eyes lit up as if he had seen a big customer. He grabbed onto Tang Zheng and passionately said, "This young hero, seeing that you have a good foundation, this mysterious sky divine technique is tailor-made for you. Why don't we go inside and talk?" The waiter in the shop next door also rushed over and grabbed Tang Zheng's other arm. He said, "Young hero, our shop's holy beheading saber is a perfect match for you. You will definitely kill in all directions and become famous." Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at the two people on his left and right. These two people were also practitioners. It seemed that there were no ordinary people in the God realm. "This is my customer. Why are you here?" The waiter on the left frowned and said coldly. The waiter on the right refused to budge and said, "Young hero didn't enter your shop. How can you say he's your customer? He's also my customer. What's wrong with that? You're deliberately looking for trouble, aren't you? At most we'll just fight. The waiter rolled up his sleeves and a light flew out from behind him. It was actually a treasure. Let's fight. Who's afraid of who? The other waiter's hand flashed with a light. It was also a treasure. It seemed like it wasn't the first time these two people were doing this. Tang Zheng opened his eyes and said, "You two don't be in a hurry to fight. I'm interested in both of your things. You can take a look at both of them." Only then did the two give up. They put away their treasures and put on a flattering smile. "Then, young hero, why don't you take a look at our mysterious sky divine technique first? Why don't you take a look at our holy beheading saber first?" The other waiter was unwilling to be left behind. Cough cough. Seeing the two people's faces turn red and about to start a fight, Tang Zheng coughed dryly and stopped them. "I'll take a look at the mysterious sky divine technique first." One of them immediately became arrogant like a victorious general. The other waiter was indignant, but had no way to refute. Tang Zheng followed the waiter into the shop. This shop could be said to be filled with jewels and treasures. Not only were there secret manuals, there were also all kinds of treasures. The dazzling jewels and treasures were emitted by the treasures. The waiter lightly pointed at the highest shelf. With a flash of light, a jade box floated down and landed in his hand. He carefully raised it in front of Tang Zheng and said, "Young hero, this is our shop's treasure, the mysterious sky divine technique. Please take a look." The waiter opened the jade box. A ray of light flew out from the box and illuminated the shop. The other waiter curled his lips and seemed to be quite disdainful. Tang Zheng stared at the jade and found that it was quite attractive. Not only did it emit a ray of light, but it also emitted a mysterious aura. Tang Zheng reached out his hand wanting to take it, but the waiter closed the jade box with a pa sound and said while beaming, "Young hero, the mysterious sky divine technique is a cultivation technique, so you can only look at it and not touch it. Otherwise, if you directly read the cultivation technique in the jade strip, then what would I sell it for?" Tang Zheng retracted his hand and bitterly smiled. "I was too impatient." The waiter said, "The mysterious sky divine technique and young hero are fated. Moreover, the price is fair and honest. It would be a pity to miss it." "How much?" 10,000 spirit stones. Spirit stones? Tang Zheng asked. Could it be that the currency in the god realm was spirit stones? But after thinking about it carefully, it made sense. After all, the people in the god realm were all cultivators and spirit stones contained heaven and earth spirit stones. They were essential for cultivation. But how much was 10,000 spirit stones? Tang Zheng did not have a specific idea. Moreover, he did not have any spirit stones on him. Heaven and earth spirit stones were of a higher level than spirit stones, but they were all used to rebuild the stairway to heaven. Seeing that Tang Zheng was silent, the waiter hurriedly said, "Young hero, our price is very fair. 10,000 spirit stones. You won't lose out or be cheated." Tang Zheng bitterly smiled and spread out his hands. "But I don't have any spirit stones. What should I do?" "No spirit stones?" The two waiters were shocked as if it was beyond their expectations. Their eyes were sharp as they looked at Tang Zheng from head to toe. They saw that he was handsome and had an extraordinary temperament. He did not look like someone who did not have spirit stones. "Young hero, if you don't have spirit stones, if you have other treasures, you can exchange," the waiter suggested. "I have treasures, but I can't take them out to exchange." Tang Zheng's treasures were not ordinary, but he would not use them to exchange. The waiter's face stiffened, but he still squeezed out a smile. He looked around and carefully asked in a low voice, "Then do you have the power of faith?" Chapter 1851. Faith Power. Tang Zheng pricked up his ears, his heart moved, and he asked, "Is the power of faith useful?" The waiter looked at Tang Zheng as if he was an idiot and said, "Young hero, don't tell me you don't even know this?" Tang Zheng's expression did not change as he said, "I live too far away, so I am ignorant and inexperienced. Please enlighten me." Faith power is very useful. The waiter raised his eyebrows and pointed to the sky and said, "You know the reason why the god race is so strong is because they don't use spirit stones to cultivate but faith power. This is a very high-level power. Once it is fused with faith power, cultivation will be twice as fast with half the effort." Tang Zheng suddenly realized. So that's how it is. The waiter faintly sighed and said disappointedly, if you don't have spirit stones or faith power, then you should leave. It's not bad to walk around the city and broaden your horizons. Since this person came from a remote place and didn't have spirit stones, it was even more impossible for him to have faith power. There was no need to waste his breath. Tang Zheng saw through the waiter's thoughts and laughed involuntarily. His gaze fell on the jade box and he was actually interested in the mysterious sky divine exercise. If this mysterious sky divine exercise was really as powerful as the waiter said, then he could see the God Realm's cultivation system and find many problems. I want this mysterious sky divine exercise. Tang Zheng pointed to the jade box and said. The waiter squeezed out a smile and said, young hero, you don't have spirit stones or other treasures to exchange. The mysterious sky divine exercise cannot be given to you. AI. The other waiter shook his head in disappointment and resentfully turned to leave. Tang Zheng smiled faintly and said, I really don't have these things, but I have faith power. What? The two waiters seemed to have been petrified and were petrified in place. Suddenly, they quivered and reacted as if they had just woken up from a dream. They stared at Tang Zheng and asked, you have faith power? Tang Zheng smiled and nodded. Yes. We can trade, we can trade. This mysterious sky divine exercise is yours. The waiter was so excited that he was almost incoherent. The holy slaying saber is also yours, the other waiter quickly added. The speed at which these two changed was beyond Tang Zheng's expectations, which showed the importance of the power of faith. Tang Zheng had already become a god, and understood the value of the power of faith. However, he still had many questions. If you want the power of faith, it's simple. But you have to answer a few of my questions truthfully. No problem. The two of them said in unison. Obviously, they were determined to obtain the power of faith. The power of faith is used by the gods. Why do you want the power of faith? Could it be that human cultivators can also use the power of faith? Tang Zheng asked in a deep voice. He had created the new heavenly book, so that the various races could use the power of faith. This was a great contribution and a great merit. He did not believe that the god race would spread their power of faith, so that everyone in the world could use it. Moreover, it was not easy for ordinary people to use the power of faith. If it was not for the new heavenly book, ordinary people would not be able to use the power of faith, and could only sigh. The waiter put his finger to his mouth and made a shushing gesture. He said carefully, young hero, this is confidential. However, seeing that we are fated, I will take the risk and tell you. In the past, cultivators could not use the power of faith. It was specially provided by the god race, but later on, someone among the cultivators created a technique called the art of deity. The art of deity allows cultivators to use the power of faith. Art of deity? Tang Zheng's spirit shook. This was similar to his new heavenly book. It was also created by a cultivator. He felt like a hero cherishing a hero. Where is this person? He asked impatiently. Dead. The waiter said regretfully. This kind of person actually died? How did he die? The waiter pointed to the sky. Tang Zheng's head trembled. He understood that this person died at the hands of the god race. Thinking about it carefully, this was not strange. The power of faith was specially provided by the god race. If this person wanted to get his hands on it, wouldn't he be going against the god race? Naturally, he would be killed by the god race. Haha, the god race is high and mighty. They have delusions of enslaving the human race. Their intentions are terrible. Tang Zheng laughed coldly. This scared the two so much that they trembled. They quickly covered his mouth and said in shock, don't talk nonsense. You will die. Tang Zheng said disapprovingly, I won't say it. The two were relieved and looked deeply at Tang Zheng. They thought that he really came from a small place and had shallow knowledge. The newborn calf was not afraid of the tiger. Remember, don't say such things in the future. Otherwise, you will get into trouble. This is free advice for you. The waiter kindly reminded. Could it be that you have the art of deity, so you want the power of faith? Tang Zheng asked curiously. The waiter shook his head and said, our status is low. How could we have such a secret manual? But others have it. We only help to collect the power of faith. We don't know anything else. The other waiter nodded in agreement. Tang Zheng looked deeply at the two and smiled meaningfully. He didn't pursue the matter and said straightforwardly, "Fine, I won't ask anymore. We won't ask where the power of faith comes from. This is the rule to ensure the safety of both parties," the waiter said seriously. "Then how much power of faith do I have to give you?" Tang Zheng asked. The waiter's eyes lit up. "How much do you have?" Tang Zheng shivered. One shouldn't reveal one's wealth. This power of faith was too important. There was no need to attract unnecessary trouble. "A little bit," the waiter said disappointedly. "Even a little bit is precious. I only need one bottle." He took out a small wooden bottle and said, "This is a bottle refined from the primordial tree. It can contain the power of faith. Outsiders won't be able to discover it." The small wooden bottle showed how precious the power of faith was. Just a small bottle could be exchanged for the mysterious sky divine art. However, Tang Zheng was more interested in the primordial tree. He said deliberately, "The primordial tree actually has such a function." Of course, the power of faith is different from ordinary power. The divine race can easily sense it. The primordial tree is born from the divine realm. It stands tall and has extraordinary power. It can isolate the power of faith from the divine race's senses. The waiter talked nonstop. He looked at Tang Zheng in surprise and asked, "Don't tell me you don't use the primordial tree to store your power of faith?" Tang Zheng smiled and didn't say anything. His power of faith filled his entire body. Why would he need anything else to store it? "Give me the primordial tree bottle." Tang Zheng took the primordial tree bottle. The two waiters opened their eyes wide and paid attention to his every move. However, in the blink of an eye, Tang Zheng returned the primordial tree bottle to the waiter and said, "The power of faith is full." The waiter looked down in disbelief. Sure enough, the primordial tree bottle was filled with the power of faith. The two looked at each other in disbelief. They didn't see how Tang Zheng had done it. Chapter 1852. The waiter was extremely disappointed. He thought he would be able to find some clues about Tang Zheng, but in the end he came up empty-handed. However, a bottle of faith power was more important than anything else. The waiter carefully put away the primordial wood bottle and placed the jade box in Tang Zheng's palm. His face lit up with joy. "The mysterious sky divine technique is yours." Tang Zheng did not even have the time to open the jade box before he was hurriedly dragged away by another waiter who said, "Young hero, it won't be too late to study the sky profound divine technique after you by our saint beheading blade." In a flash, Tang Zheng was next door. The waiter pointed at a long stone box and said, "The Saint Slayer blade is in there. Give me a bottle of faith power and it's yours." The waiter handed over the bottle with both hands, his eyes full of fanatical expectation. The power of faith was inexhaustible for Tang Zheng. He didn't think too much about it. He took the bottle and immediately returned it to the waiter, reaching out to snatch the stone box. The waiter held the bottle with both hands, treating it like a treasure. He carefully rushed into the back room, ignoring Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng strode out of the shop with the jade box in one hand and the stone box in the other. There were too many people and too many eyes. He entered a secluded path, his eyes full of expectation. Let's take a look at the mysterious heaven divine art first. Bang! The jade box opened, and a ray of light shot out. It was incomparably mysterious. Tang Zheng narrowed his eyes, picked up the jade slip, and sank his consciousness into it. A cultivation method appeared in his mind. Tang Zheng's expression changed slightly. This cultivation method was indeed called the mysterious heaven divine art, but it was far from what the waiter had introduced. Saint Realm's secret manual? With Tang Zheng's insight, he could naturally see that the mysterious heaven divine art didn't live up to its name. An ominous feeling welled up in his heart. He hurriedly opened the stone box, and a sharp light rushed out. Waves of blade hummed incessantly, and the multicolored blade light was exceptionally dazzling. However, when his gaze fell on the blade, his heart skipped a beat. With a bang, the stone box and the Saint Slayer blade crashed into the wall and exploded into pieces. Like the heavenly mysterious divine technique, The so-called sacred slaying blade that could kill a Saint Realm cultivator did not live up to its name. His presentiment was confirmed. He had been tricked. He had just arrived here, and he had already been deceived by 2 waiters from the immortal realm. If news of this were to spread, wouldn't he become a laughing stock? He would lose all his face. He looked around. Fortunately, no one else saw him. Otherwise, where would his face be cut off? In the end, he laughed, shook his head, and sighed. I was too careless. In the realm of the gods, the god race and the human race exist side by side. The human race lives under the pressure of the god race, so how can they be ordinary people? Especially this waiter of the inn. He's been dealing with all kinds of people since a long time ago. It wasn't difficult for him to fool me. His anger gradually subsided, and his interest was piqued. The waiter is so eager to get the power of faith, but it's definitely not for them to enjoy. There's someone else behind the scenes. If I can find the person behind the scenes, I might be able to get the heavenly god technique. With that, I'll be able to see the magnificence of the unprecedented person in the realm of the gods. Compared to the new heavenly book, I'll definitely be able to discover more. He turned and walked toward the 2 shops. From afar, he saw that the doors of the 2 shops were tightly shut. They were no longer welcoming customers. They closed so quickly. As expected, they've gotten some benefits and lied to me. They're afraid that I'll come back and cause trouble. Tang Zheng understood in an instant. He stopped himself from rushing forward to ask what was going on. There were too many people around. If he smashed down their doors, it would inevitably lead to unnecessary trouble, especially when there were soldiers patrolling the streets. These were all the subordinates of the god race. He did not want to expose his identity too early. He had always shown his true face, but no one had paid much attention to his appearance. This meant that Yuan Ying's clone was not known by many in the realm of the gods. Perhaps only some of the god race knew about him. Tang Zheng might as well directly and openly show his face to the others. It's easy for you to cheat my power of faith, but you don't know that it's my power of faith. It's connected to my mind and is equivalent to my guiding light. The corners of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up into a smile. He found that the power of faith was in these 2 shops, which meant that they did not take it away. I'll wait for you. I'll see where you'll take the power of faith in the end. Tang Zheng leisurely toured the city. He passed by some shops. The shop assistants were also shouting with all their might, each offering their so-called treasures. With a lesson learned from the past, Tang Zheng smiled and went away. He focused on observing the practitioners around him. Their cultivations were poles apart. There were all kinds of cultivations. There was no lack of masters of the Mahayana realm among them. However, he did not see a single person of the Saint Realm cultivation. Unknowingly, he came to the center of the city. A magnificent building emerged from the ground like bamboo shoots, standing in front of him. He looked up. This building was very tall and majestic. It was actually 100 feet tall. There was a mysterious and unfathomable power faintly coming out from it. It seemed to be a different world from the outside world. The passing practitioners all avoided it, not daring to get close. This building was like a devil's den hell. Tang Zheng's gaze was finally attracted by a plaque. There were 3 ancient words City Lord's Mansion written on it. These 3 words contain some kind of mysterious power. This person's calligraphy is extremely good. Just looking at these 3 words is enough to attract people. Tang Zheng sighed. The gate of the City Lord's Mansion was heavily guarded. As if sensing his gaze, the guard looked up. His eyes were like fire, with a burning magic power. However, the guards did not see anything because Tang Zheng had already left without causing the slightest ripple. After a big circle, Tang Zheng found a clue. There were many practitioners in this city, but no one was flying on a weapon. Whether it was ordinary practitioners or the strict soldiers, they all moved forward step by step. For practitioners, flying on a weapon was simple and fast. However, even if these practitioners were in a hurry, they were still stepping on the ground. This was greatly beyond his expectations. Tang Zheng lowered his head and looked at the ground thoughtfully. Suddenly he looked up at the sky again and smiled knowingly. I know. It turned out that the inside of the city was completely different from the outside. The inside of the city was set up with a complex array specifically to restrict people from flying. Once a person flew on a weapon, they would trigger the array, which would lead to a fatal disaster. The fighting strength of practitioners in the city was sharply reduced. This must be the means of the god race. The power of practitioners in the city is weakened. Even if there are rebellious practitioners, they can't make any big waves in the city. Tang Zheng pondered for a while, and saw through the mystery. He didn't challenge this array. With a thought, the 2 bottles of faith power moved. He Shenrua passed through the streets without leaving a trace, and came to the front of the shop in an instant. The doors of the 2 shops were opened slightly, and the 2 waiters' figures flashed as they exited the shop. They looked at each other and snorted coldly. Then they moved like rabbits and ran toward the same direction in the city. The fish finally took the bait. Chapter 1853. Although the 2 of them couldn't fly, their speed was still very fast. Finally, the 2 of them stopped in front of a pitch-black door. This door faintly emitted a gloomy aura, as if there was a terrifying existence behind it. Whoosh whoosh. The 2 of them took a deep breath and adjusted their breathing. Their faces were filled with fear as they clenched their teeth and pushed open the black door. Creak. The black door made a hoarse sound as it slowly opened. A gust of cold wind blew out, causing people to tremble in fear. Tang Zheng stood at the corner and took in the whole scene. A hint of doubt flashed through his eyes. What is this place? Why is the cold wind blowing and the Yin energy so strong? Bang. The black door closed, blocking Tang Zheng's vision. Even the Yin energy disappeared in a flash, as if it had never appeared. Tang Zheng stopped in his tracks. Behind this door was filled with strangeness. Could it be that this place had some connection with the ghost realm? Who cares what's going on? Let's go in and take a look. Soon, everything will be clear. Tang Zheng walked straight to the black door. Just as he was about to jump in, he realized that the air around him was fluctuating. He took a closer look and found another clue. It's a formation again. There was actually a formation set up in front of this black door, and he had almost touched it. Tang Zheng smiled coldly. How can a mere formation stop me? Pop. He pointed his finger, and a gust of energy entered the ground in front of the black door. The fluctuating air stopped abruptly and completely calmed down. The formation was broken. Whoosh. Tang Zheng jumped and flipped into the courtyard silently. However, when he raised his head to take a look, he was shocked. There was actually nothing behind the courtyard. There was only a piece of barren land, and the 2 waiters had disappeared without a trace. However, the feeling of the power of faith was still there. Tang Zheng didn't care about exposing his whereabouts and quickly followed this feeling. The waiters walked through the barren land as if there was no end. They said in fear, "This place is too terrifying. If it wasn't because I had no other choice, I really didn't want to come here. This is already the boundary of Fengdu, a place for the dead. Which living person would want to come here?" A waiter said with a trembling voice. "Sigh, I'm afraid no one would have thought that the deity arts were actually hidden in Fengdu. This is a place of ghosts, so no one would dare to come and steal it. Should be careful, the walls have ears. So what if it's Fengdu? If the gods know about it, can Fengdu stop them? It's just a piece of cake." That's right. That's why we can't let the god race know that they have been investigating heavenly god arts. If they really find out, Fengdu will be completely finished. Wrong. It's not Fengdu that's done for, it's Fengdu City Lord that's done for. At most, they can just change to a new city lord, and they can still manage Fengdu. That makes sense. Sai, we'll also come here after we die. Let's familiarize ourselves with this place. We brought the power of faith this time. The Fengdu Necropolis City, Lord will increase our lifespan in the Book of Life and Death. How can we die so easily? Haha, that's right. If it wasn't for our lifespan, why would we take such a huge risk and do something that will cost us our lives? Tang Zheng followed the 2 of them and heard their conversation. He was shocked as their words revealed too much information. Isn't this Fengdu and the ghost world similar? Both are places where ghosts go after death. In that case, the Fengdu Necropolis City Lord is equivalent to Yama. However, the City Lord actually has the Book of Life and Death, which can control a person's lifespan. This is even more revered. The deity arts is in the hands of the Fengdu necropolis city lord, so I'll have to meet him face to face and find out the truth. However, he couldn't reveal his identity because Fengdu was also controlled by the god race. This Fengdu necropolis city lord was definitely a subordinate of the god race. However, the city lord was rather ambitious as he actually dared to cultivate the deity arts behind the god race's back. This was also because he wasn't willing to submit to others, and wanted to compete with the god race. As he walked further and further, Tang Zheng found another clue. In the human world and the ghost world, the Yin Qi was extremely harmful to humans. Humans couldn't move freely in the Yin Qi. Li Xiaotian was able to become the ghost world's traveler by chance. The two waiters' cultivation wasn't higher than Li Xiaotian's, but they could move freely in the Yin Qi. This gradually attracted Tang Zheng's attention. He pointed his finger at the Yin Qi around him, and the Yin Qi quickly gathered at his fingertips. He gradually found a clue. This Yin Qi made people shudder, but it wouldn't harm the human body. It was like a part of the air, flowing around the body without causing any harm. Tang Zheng suddenly realized and had a deeper understanding of Fengdu. Although Fengdu was also the destination of ghosts after death, it was very different from the ghost world, and couldn't be regarded as the same. All of a sudden, the waiter stopped in his tracks. A gigantic object was blocking their path. It was a sinister and terrifying ghost face. In this barren land, it was like a towering mountain. It was a ghastly sight. The waiters trembled as they raised the primordial wood bottle high and said, "City Lord, we have brought the power of faith. Please grant us lifespan." Whoosh! A gust of Yin wind swept the primordial wood bottle into the ghost face's mouth and disappeared. Tang Zheng looked at this scene quietly and his heart moved. After the primordial wood bottle disappeared into the ghost face's mouth, he actually lost his connection with it. There were only two possibilities. First, the other party's cultivation was higher than his, so it suppressed the power of faith and cut off his connection with him. Second, the primordial wood bottle was too far away and out of his range. This ghost face is controlled by the Fengdu city lord, who is looking for the power of faith everywhere. Naturally, he hasn't cultivated to become a god, and isn't my opponent. The only distance is that there's a teleportation array in the ghost face's mouth that teleported the primordial wood bottle away. After Tang Zheng finished his analysis, his mind calmed down. The waiter said while trembling, "City Lord, what about our lifespan?" Whoosh whoosh. Two rays of light shot out from the ghost face's eyes and landed on the two of them before disappearing. They revealed a happy expression and bowed. "Thank you, City Lord." A gust of Yin wind rose from the ground and swept up the two of them before disappearing without a trace. Only Tang Zheng was left in this wasteland. The ghost face didn't notice him, and was fading bit by bit as if it was about to disappear. How could Tang Zheng let the ghost face escape? He arrived in front of it like lightning and pointed with his finger, causing the ghost face's mouth to open automatically. The ghost face also saw Tang Zheng and turned pale with fright. "Who are you?" Tang Zheng smiled without saying a word. He looked at the ghost face's mouth and said with a clear expression, "So that's how it is. It really is a teleportation array, but it's completely different from ordinary ones. That's because this isn't a teleportation between two places, but between two worlds." Tang Zheng's understanding of formations and space was already quite deep, so he immediately saw through the clues. The ghost face let out a cry of surprise. "Who are you? How can you tell?" "Ha ha, how can a mere insignificant skill stump me?" Tang Zheng smiled and didn't think much of it. He charged straight into the depths of the mouth, where a ray of light appeared and became brighter and brighter. Tang Zheng suddenly plunged into the ball of light, and countless terrifying forces came one after another, as if they wanted to crush him. Chapter 1854. In Fengdu, the surrounding yin energy was even denser, but it still didn't harm the human body. Before Tang Zheng could carefully observe his surroundings, an angry roar exploded. "Who are you?" An earth-shattering aura rushed over, causing the ground to creak. Tang Zheng looked up and revealed a shocked expression. This person was very tall, and was actually wearing a ghost mask. It was exactly the same as the ghost mask he saw before, but it was much smaller. Tang Zheng was not afraid at all. Instead, he sized up the other party and asked, "You are the Fengdu City Lord? Who are you? How did you break my teleportation array and come to Fengdu City?" The city lord questioned aggressively. Tang Zheng suddenly realized and pointed to his left and right, saying, "So this is Fengdu City. Then I will have to carefully look around." Seeing that Tang Zheng didn't put him in his eyes, the city lord flew into a rage and roared, "You are courting death. I will fulfill your wish." Boom! A black aura gushed out from his body and instantly occupied all directions, blocking Tang Zheng's path. Roar! The black aura transformed into a sinister ghost head. It opened its bloody mouth and crazily bit at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's eyes were as calm as an ancient well. He pointed his finger, and it fell on top of the sinister ghost head. The ghost head suddenly stopped and actually stopped. The ghost head struggled and roared, but it was to no avail. Explode. Tang Zheng lightly spat out a word. As soon as his voice fell, the ghost head loudly exploded and turned back into black aura. The city lord turned pale with fright when he saw Tang Zheng walking towards him step by step as if there was no one around him. He yelled, "Soul item kill." A mysterious power surged out. Tang Zheng looked towards the source of this power, and saw that there was a round ball in the city lord's hand, but there were many holes on the surface. The holes flickered with a faint light, as if there was a voice coming out from within. "Is this a soul tool?" The city lord said proudly, "Exactly. As long as you have a soul, you will definitely die." Tang Zheng didn't mind and said, "Oh, then I'll take the opportunity to experience it. After you." The city lord looked at Tang Zheng as if he was looking at a fool. This person actually dared to let him make the first move. Such arrogance, he really did not know how to write the word death. However, this was exactly what the city lord wanted. "Kill." The city lord roared. The soul tool flew up and shone brightly. Tentacles drilled out from the small holes and danced in the air, emitting a mysterious power. Tang Zheng stared blankly for a moment before finally realizing something. He said, "So this soul artifact is a magic artifact specifically used to deal with souls. Haha, now that you know, it's too late." The city lord laughed loudly. Tang Zheng shrugged. "It's not late at all." He stretched out his hand to grab the soul tool. When those tentacles danced in the air, it made one's spirit waver. It was as if they were also swaying and dancing, wanting to leave the human body. This was for a normal person, or a normal cultivator. Tang Zheng was a god. His spirit was extremely sturdy. How could a soul tool shake it? Under the city lord's amused expression, Tang Zheng's hand passed through the tentacles and directly grabbed the soul tool. The city lord's mind was shaken. He couldn't believe it and exclaimed, "Impossible, impossible. How did you do it? A soul tool can take in the souls of all things in the world. How come your soul didn't leave your body?" Tang Zheng smiled and said, "Oh, it's so useful. Then I'll take it." Tang Zheng's hand retracted and directly put it into his pocket. "Don't." The city lord's eyes were already filled with fear. He screamed hysterically, but it was to no avail. Suddenly, his screams came to an abrupt stop and he rolled his eyes in despair. "Ah, my soul tool." The city lord turned pale with fright as he stared at Tang Zheng's pocket. When the soul tool was placed inside, the connection between him and the soul tool was forcibly cut off. The soul tool was no longer his treasure. In a flash, he had actually lost a treasure. How terrifying and ironic was this? He finally realized that he had kicked an iron plate. This person didn't seem to reveal anything, but he was able to break his teleportation formation and easily take away his soul tool. There was no need to doubt his strength. Even if he fought back, he might not be the other's opponent. The city lord's greatest reliance was his ability to attack and control souls. Now this method was useless against this person, so his reliance was naturally useless. Tang Zheng looked at the city lord who was in a daze and directly sat on the chair next to him. He patted the chair next to him and said casually, "Come sit down." The city lord lowered his head dejectedly and sat down dejectedly. If the ghosts in Fengdu saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked. The city lord was the master of Fengdu, but he actually lowered his head to a stranger and didn't dare to resist. At this moment, The city lord indeed didn't dare to resist. The other party gave him an unfathomable feeling, as if he was facing a god. However, he immediately rejected this thought. How could this person be a god? He was clearly a human. Don't be dejected. Cheer up and answer my question. Tang Zheng patted the city lord's shoulder. The city lord trembled and almost slid off the chair. The city lord raised his head in fear and stared at Tang Zheng, but he didn't see any clues. He asked with a guilty conscience. Who are you? This is Fengdu, a place where people die. It's not a place where you, a living person, should come. Since you're already here, you should answer my question first. Tang Zheng didn't care at all. What question? Why are you collecting the power of faith? What? The city lords but bounced up from the chair, and he cried out in surprise. Who are you saying is collecting the power of faith? You're slandering me. What's with such a big reaction? Whether I'm slandering you or not, you'll know by looking at this. Tang Zheng pointed at the city lord, and the 2 yuan-wood bottles flew into the air. The city lord turned pale with fright and screamed, That's mine. However, the origin wood bottles had already fallen into Tang Zheng's hands. The city lord grabbed nothing and resentfully looked at the origin wood bottles, keeping quiet out of fear. These aren't yours, they're mine. Tang Zheng put the origin wood bottles into his bag and said, Now you admit that I didn't wrongly accuse you. The city lord suddenly raised his head and stared at Tang Zheng. I'll answer you. Everyone knows the importance of the power of faith. If you have the power of faith, you'll be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. The power of faith needs to be combined with the heavenly God law to display its greatest effect. Does that mean you have the heavenly God law? Tang Zheng asked with interest. The city lord's eyelids jumped and he flatly denied. I don't. The heavenly God law disappeared a long time ago. Haha, you don't mean what you say. Then I'll spread the news of you collecting the power of faith. I believe the God race will be interested in you. Tang Zheng blatantly threatened. The city lord vigilantly asked, You're not from the God race? Tang Zheng's lips curled into a thought-provoking smile as he mysteriously said, They're not worthy. Hiss. The city lord sucked in a breath of cold air. Since ancient times, he had never seen anyone so bold as to say such disgraceful words in public. Chapter 1855. The city lord looked at Tang Zheng in shock and asked coldly, What do you want to do? Heavenly God arts. Tang Zheng reached out to the city lord. The city lord's eyelids twitched as he gritted his teeth and denied, I don't. Tang Zheng turned around and left saying, Then you'll have to explain to the God race. The city lord clenched his fists, really wanting to punch Tang Zheng to death, but in terms of strength he was no match for Tang Zheng. If the God race really found out, not to mention the city lord position, his life would be in danger. Wait a minute. The city lord hesitated for a long time before calling out dejectedly. Tang Zheng stopped and turned to look at him with a smile saying, Have you thought it through? The city lord snorted saying, You spent so much effort and used the power of faith as bait to find the heavenly God arts and become a god, right? In fact, we are on the same side, why should we kill each other? Tang Zheng's lips curled as he said in a complicated tone, Become a god by cultivation, haha. Don't deny it, I am not as good as you. I am only one step away from the Saint Realm, and you can beat me. So naturally you are a Saint Realm cultivator. Don't you want to break through the final barrier and fly to the heavens? The city lord said solemnly as if he saw through Tang Zheng's thoughts. Tang Zheng did not comment saying, Give me the heavenly god arts first. Have you collected enough power of faith? The city lord asked. Is there a problem? Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows. I will give you the heavenly god arts, and you will give me the excess power of faith. Once you become a god, the power of faith will be at your fingertips, and that little bit of power will be insignificant. The city lord's eyes burned as he stared at Tang Zheng, full of expectation. Haha, your wishful thinking is very good, Tang Zheng said with a sigh. This is a win-win situation, why not? The city lord persuaded. Tang Zheng shook his head and said solemnly, You don't have the qualifications to negotiate with me. Heavenly God arts. The city lord's eyes widened in anger as he stared straight at Tang Zheng. wishing he could rush up to him. His last bit of reason suppressed this impulse. He took a deep breath and said bitterly, "I'll give it to you. Do you think that everything will be fine after you become a god? Didn't someone from the lower realm cultivate and become a deity in the god realm recently? Isn't he being hunted down everywhere?" Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. Wasn't the person the city lord was talking about his clone? He was very curious about the situation of the clone, but he was not in a hurry to ask. His gaze fell on the jade scroll that flew over. Heavenly God Arts. It was precisely these 3 words on the jade slip, and every stroke revealed traces of profundity. Having learned his lesson, he wasn't in a hurry to check the jade slip. He first weighed it in his hand and said, "This can't be fake, right?" He had just come to the god realm, and was deceived by the waiter. The people of the god realm were not what they used to be. He learned from his mistakes and inevitably became more cautious. The city lord's heart trembled. He had originally thought of using a fake to deceive Tang Zheng, but in the end, he was afraid of Tang Zheng's strength and didn't dare to put it into practice. After all, with Tang Zheng's eyes, he could definitely distinguish between the real and the fake. Why bother? The city lord pretended to be indignant and said, "How can it be fake? If you don't want it, just give it back to me." Tang Zheng looked at the city lord without blinking. Seeing that he didn't seem to be faking it, he smiled and said, "If it's real or fake, I can also distinguish it." The city lord's heart skipped a beat, and he felt a wave of lingering fear. Tang Zheng immediately read the contents of the jade slip. It was indeed the heavenly god arts. It was indeed the path to becoming a god. Moreover, it was an alternative path, forcibly building a divine bridge after the saint realm. Cultivators ascended the divine bridge, entered the god realm, and cultivated to become a god. This heavenly god arts focused on building the divine bridge. The divine bridge wasn't built overnight, but was the result of accumulation over time. The divine bridge wasn't formed by condensing true qi. Only the power of faith could build a divine bridge. The city lord painstakingly collected the power of faith to build the divine bridge. Tang Zheng looked at the city lord thoughtfully. The city lord's heart beat wildly, but he pretended to be calm. "I built the heavenly stairway and the heavenly palace. I also created the new heavenly book for people to absorb the power of faith and cultivate to become a god. It's indeed different from the heavenly god arts, but different paths lead to the same goal. The god realm is indeed extraordinary to have a genius like me." Tang Zheng sighed in his heart. It's a pity that that genius has already fallen. He shook his head and couldn't help but sympathize with him. The idea of the divine bridge is very unique and worth learning. If I can apply it to my cultivation, will there be new changes? Once this thought appeared, he couldn't help but become excited. It was completely possible. However, he wasn't in a hurry to test it. Instead, he asked, "Once one cultivates to become a god, is there a different realm in the god realm?" "Of course there is." The city lord looked at Tang Zheng like he was an idiot and said, "The god realm is also divided by strength." "Then what are the specific realms?" The city lord looked at Tang Zheng with a strange expression and said, "You asked the right person. Normal people definitely don't know, but I know clearly. The god realm isn't divided as much as the humans. There are only 3 realms: God Monarch, God King, and God Emperor. There are many god realm people. Are they born as god monarchs?" Tang Zheng asked, puzzled. "Wrong. They are born as godsons and only become god monarchs when they grow up. Even if they are godsons, their strength is unfathomable. They are still gods, not something we can contend against," the city lord said regretfully. He had cultivated his whole life, but he couldn't compare to the babies of the god race. This was a huge blow. Then after we cultivate to become gods, will we be godsons or god monarchs? The city lord raised his head and said, "According to the last words left behind by that sage, once you cultivate the heavenly god arts and become a god, you will become a god monarch in one leap, surpassing the godson stage." Tang Zheng came to a realization and let out a sigh of relief. It was the same as his guess. If a human cultivated their whole life and only became a godson in the end, that would be too tragic. Moreover, when he won the battle with the god race, That god race person had already grown up and couldn't be a godson. Since he defeated him, he naturally couldn't be a godson. Then I am now in the god monarch realm. However, when he thought about the two realms above him, his heart sank. This god realm didn't seem as simple as he thought. It was far more dangerous than he expected. There was a huge difference between each realm. If Tang Zheng met a god king or god emperor, wouldn't only death be waiting for him? How many god race people are there, and where do they live? Tang Zheng asked again. After entering the god realm, he hadn't seen a single god race person. They must be living somewhere. As for how many god race people there were, he was more interested. Of course the god race lives in the god city. The city lord rolled his eyes at Tang Zheng, as if he felt that his question was unnecessary. This is common knowledge. How can you not know? The city lord sized up Tang Zheng, his eyes full of doubt. Tang Zheng ignored him and asked, "Then how many god race people are there?" Chapter 1856. Tang Zheng's eyes were like torches as he stared at the city lord without blinking, as if he wanted to see through his thoughts. The city lord raised his head and looked at him calmly. After a moment, Tang Zheng asked again, "Then how do I get to the god city?" Only the god race can go to the god city, and only the god race knows the exact location. I don't know at all, the city lord said regretfully. Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows and said, "You are the city lord of Fengdu, a feudal lord. How can you not know anything about the god city? You are not honest." The city lord's heart skipped a beat, and his eyes flickered. Tang Zheng walked forward and looked at the city lord at close range. "If you don't tell me, the city lord of Fengdu will be replaced." "You want to kill me?" The city lord probed with a guilty conscience. "So what if I do? I have already given you the heavenly god technique. You can become a god, so why make things difficult for me?" The city lord said with annoyance. Tang Zheng smiled and said, "I just want to take a look at the heavenly god technique. I don't want to use it to become a god. Moreover, is there a need for you to hide information about the god city from me?" The city lord hesitated and finally said, "I can tell you, but you have to promise not to hurt me." "Speak," Tang Zheng said simply. "The god city is above the 9 heavens. The astral winds there are biting cold, so normal people can't reach the god city. Only the god race can resist the astral winds and reach the god city. However, the god city is filled with the god race. Even if you become a god, going to the god city is like walking right into a trap. I have said all I want to say. You have nothing else to say." The city lord put on a brave face and stared straight at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng and the city lord looked at each other to make sure he wasn't hiding anything. Tang Zheng then nodded with satisfaction. "I have nothing to ask about the god city. However, I have many questions about Fengdu. If you can satisfy me, I can give you this power of belief." The primordial wood bottle appeared in Tang Zheng's hand and immediately attracted the city lord's gaze. He swallowed his saliva and said emotionally, "Ask away. I'll tell you everything I know about Fengdu. Fengdu is the final destination of people after they die. It is also in charge of reincarnation. Your authority is not small. Besides, what is the Book of Life and Death?" Tang Zheng fired off a series of questions in rapid succession. This time, it was the city lord's turn to look at him in shock. He stammered, "How come you don't know anything about Fengdu? Many of the questions are too ridiculous and ridiculous. Even a 3-year-old child in the divine world would know the answer to them. Yet you actually know nothing about them." The city lord's heart was in turmoil. Suddenly, a thought appeared in his mind. He was shocked by this thought. His eyes widened as he sized up Tang Zheng from head to toe, as if he wanted to see through him. He's not from the god realm. That's why he has so many questions, and so many childish ones at that. The city lord had heard about someone from the lower realm who had cultivated to become a god, and came to the divine realm. He had even caused a huge commotion in the city. However, there was no specific information about this person. Even the city lord knew nothing about him. The city lord was frightened. That person was the target of the divine race. If he was involved with him, he could forget about living. He subconsciously touched his neck as if his head was about to move. This is only my guess. What if he's not that person? The city lord still had a trace of hope. There is a way to confirm his identity. The Book of Life and Death can do this. He quietly flipped his palm and aimed it at Tang Zheng. In the next second, he seemed to be petrified. He was dumbfounded and his eyes lost their spirit. His name was not in the Book of Life and Death. What did this mean? This meant that this person was not from the divine world. The Book of Life and Death was a sacred weapon that controlled the life and death of people in the divine world. As long as the Book of Life and Death shone on a person, their information would appear. However, the Book of Life and Death had no effect on this person. His identity was naturally revealed. Tang Zheng looked at the city lord's dazed appearance and frowned. He asked unhappily, "Didn't you say you would tell me everything you know? Why aren't you saying a word?" The city lord came back to his senses as if he had just woken up from a dream. He could no longer hide the horror in his heart and shouted, "It's you, that person is you." After saying that, he staggered back and muttered to himself, "I should have guessed it. You have the power of faith and your cultivation is higher than mine. You don't even know a lot of common sense. Besides the person who broke into the divine world, who else could you be?" I'm dead. If the divine race knew that I told you so much and talked so much with you, not only would I not be able to be the city lord, but my soul would also scatter. As if possessed, the city lord kept muttering in annoyance. Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he also understood that the city lord thought he was Yuan Ying's clone. "Hey!" Tang Zheng patted the city lord's shoulder heavily. The city lord sat on the ground and screamed, "I'm dead. You and I know. As long as you and I don't say anything, who will know what happened between us?" Tang Zheng comforted. The city lord's eyes lit up, and he nodded like he was pounding garlic. "That's right, if we don't say anything, no one will know." "Of course, I won't say anything." "Will you tell anyone?" "If you answer my question just now, I won't say a word to anyone," Tang Zheng said with a smile. He didn't explain that he wasn't Yuan Ying's clone. The city lord took a deep breath and gradually calmed down. "Okay, I'll tell you. Fengdu isn't the final destination of people after they die. Fengdu is just a transition world. After people die, they pass through Fengdu and finally go to the 9 underworlds. The 9 underworlds is the true destination of ghosts." The 9 underworlds? It was the first time Tang Zheng heard of this place. Is the 9 underworlds another world? Yes. The 9 underworlds is different from Fengdu. The 9 underworlds has existed since ancient times, and appeared when heaven and earth were split apart. Fengdu was created by the god race and set up as a transit place between the god world and the 9 underworlds. Tang Zheng was flabbergasted. There were actually so many mysteries in it. He had a flash of inspiration and said, "Didn't the god race create Fengdu to purposely intercept the ghosts of the 9 underworlds? This move of removing the firewood from under the cauldron is truly powerful." The city lord's expression froze, and he said, "How did you guess?" "Hee, it's not hard to guess. The god race wants to control everything, and the 9 underworlds is definitely not under their control. Therefore, they created Fengdu to intercept the ghosts of the 9 underworlds, and weaken the power of the 9 underworlds. It's truly brilliant," Tang Zheng sighed. The city lord said resentfully, "This is something from a long time ago. Anyway, I didn't say anything. You guessed it yourself. Fengdu intercepted the ghosts of the 9 underworlds, so your Fengdu's power will also become stronger and stronger. You, the city lord, are extraordinary. The god race also places great importance on you, which is why they let you sit in the position of city lord. Shouldn't this be something the god race's trusted aides do? Why do you still want to cultivate to become a god? This isn't something a trusted aide should do," Tang Zheng joked. Chapter 1857. Tang Zheng stared at the city lord with a burning gaze, and he saw strong dissatisfaction in his eyes. Although he was valued by the god race, he felt a sense of crisis. The god race controlled his life and death, and he wanted to get rid of all this. Tang Zheng's heart moved, and he suddenly had an idea, saying, "I admire you very much. You are not willing to be trampled on by others. This is a true hero. If you let the god race control your fate, even the city lord of Fengdu would be a puppet. not worth mentioning. The city lord gradually raised his head and looked at Tang Zheng with mixed feelings. He had done too much work these years, and he was very careful, afraid that the god race would one day stand in front of him, tell him that he was exposed, and take his life. Tang Zheng actually praised him, which made him feel a strong sense of pride. What do you want to do in the god realm? The city lord asked. Tang Zheng smiled and said, I also don't want others to control my fate. Not only that, humans don't want the god race to control their fate, so I came to the god realm. The city lord looked at Tang Zheng in disbelief and exclaimed, Then what do you want to do? Tang Zheng looked up at the sky and said, The god race is high above, and they have enslaved us for so many years. Don't you want to drag them down from the god city? Whoosh whoosh. The city lord's breathing became rapid, and he muttered to himself, Madman, you are really crazy. The city lord only wanted to cultivate to become a god, and then secretly hide from the god race's ruler. As for the fate of others, he had never thought about it, and he did not dare to think about it at all. It was an impossible thing, so he had never had such an extravagant hope. But at this moment he actually heard these words from Tang Zheng's mouth, and it was so enlightening that it seemed like a fantasy story. Tang Zheng asked, Do you really think I am crazy? If I can cultivate to become a god, why can't other humans do it? Should humans be enslaved by the god race? The city lord stuttered and shook his head in a daze. I don't know, and I don't dare to think about it. I know you only think of yourself, that is understandable. But I am different. I have family, friends, and countless compatriots who trust me. Therefore, I will do this without hesitation and without shirking my responsibility. Tang Zheng's voice was not very loud and impassioned, but for some reason, when the mayor heard it, he felt as if his blood was boiling. His ice-cold heart seemed to beat violently, and he couldn't help but clench his fists. Tang Zheng dared to think of things that he did not dare to think of, which made him feel deep veneration. Tang Zheng looked at City Lord with a smile, and took in all of his reactions. He said straightforwardly, You are the master of Fengdu. Don't you want the ghosts in Fengdu to cultivate into gods and break free from being enslaved by the god race? The city lord raised his head abruptly, as if he had thousands of words to say, but he realized that he couldn't say them out loud. He lowered his head resentfully and said, It is already an illusory thing for me to cultivate into a god. So how can I talk about other ghosts? Tang Zheng shook his head and patted City Lord's shoulder, saying, You are wrong. Your predecessors have already paved the way for you. As long as you set foot on this path, although there are difficulties, this path can also become a broad road. Why don't you want to do it? Are you willing to be enslaved by the god race for generations? Tang Zheng's voice suddenly became louder, like thunder exploding in City Lord's ears. It was so loud that even the deaf could hear it. City Lord's heart trembled fiercely, but he mustered up his courage and said, I don't want to. That's right. Tang Zheng nodded in satisfaction and put the primordial wood bottle in City Lord's hand, saying, There is the power of faith here. You have to cultivate into a god first. Then you can lead the ghosts of Fengdu to break free from the god race's enslavement and control your own destiny. City Lord was fascinated and looked at the primordial wood bottle in a daze, saying, You are really giving me the power of faith. Yes, don't you want it? Of course I want it. City Lord immediately held the primordial wood bottle tightly in his palm. Ha ha ha. Tang Zheng laughed in satisfaction. I look forward to you becoming a god soon. He waved his hand and turned to leave, his figure fading bit by bit. City Lord immediately asked, Are you really going to the god city? I will definitely. When that time comes, the gods will no longer be high and mighty. They will fall from their divine altars, and the world will change. Tang Zheng's heroic spirit reached the clouds, and his voice echoed in City Lord's ears. City Lord's gaze drifted as he looked at Tang Zheng in a daze, until his figure disappeared without a trace. Everything was like a dream. City Lord shook his head violently, and looked at the primordial wood bottle in his palm. Only then did he confirm that everything was real. His heart that was like stagnant water couldn't help but ripple, spreading further and further. Tang Zheng didn't leave Fengdu. He raised his head to look. Even though he was standing on the ground, his eyes seemed to have risen to the sky and looked down at the world of Fengdu. The sky of Fengdu wasn't like the human world. There was no sun and no traces of stars. The sky gave off light, which was the source of light for Fengdu. Fengdu was much smaller than the ghost realm. Other than Fengdu City, the other places were very barren, but there were still ghosts living there. However, these ghosts were very weak and couldn't be compared to those in Fengdu City. The world of Fengdu created by the god race is too crude. After all, it's a world created by the gods, so there isn't much to see. On the other hand, the 9 underworlds are more worth a visit. The 9 underworlds had existed since ancient times and wasn't a world created by the gods, so there was definitely something unusual about it. Tang Zheng didn't know how to go to the 9 underworlds, but since he knew about its existence, it wasn't a problem for him. The most important thing now was to comprehend secrets of the heavenly god. Secrets of the heavenly god had great wisdom, so he decided to use it as a reference to build a divine bridge. He had inexhaustible power of faith, so building a divine bridge wasn't difficult for him. However, his divine bridge was worlds apart from the divine bridges of normal cultivators. Secrets of the heavenly god circulated, and the surging power of faith gathered in his purple manor. Ever since Yuanying left him, his purple manor had been empty. The power of faith filled his purple manor, and a divine bridge gradually appeared. This divine bridge didn't have a pier, and it was like a flying bridge that crossed a natural chasm. The head of the bridge appeared. Instantly, an earth-shattering change happened in his purple manor. A ray of multicolored light shone on the head of the bridge, and it shone with boundless light. Dense mist rose, and the head of the bridge seemed to be standing in the midst of the multicolored light. Tang Zheng was shocked. The secrets of the heavenly god was indeed extraordinary. Building a divine bridge actually created such a spectacle. And this was only the head of the bridge. If the entire divine bridge was built, how magnificent would it be? Tang Zheng yearned for it, and his heart palpitated with eagerness. However, he didn't know that the divine bridge of normal cultivators wouldn't create such a miraculous and magnificent vision. He was a god, and the divine bridge he built had already undergone an essential change. It had already broken away from the secrets of the heavenly god, and was completely different from the divine bridge that the senior had created. Tang Zheng was completely unaware, and he was immersed in the marvelous realm of building a divine bridge. With a spurt of energy, the divine bridge extended bit by bit, further and further away. It was like a broad road that extended to the end of the illusory world. Chapter 1858. Tang Zheng tried his best to see, but he couldn't see the end of the divine bridge. Instead, a ray of light soared into the sky and blocked his vision. He calmed down. He had built the divine bridge, but there was still an unknown existence at the end of the divine bridge. With his current cultivation as a god sovereign, he couldn't see through it and reach it. Perhaps he would be able to solve this riddle when his cultivation reached a higher level. His power of faith flowed along the divine bridge like a swimming dragon, rushing to the end of the divine bridge and disappearing into the ray of light. Instantly, he felt his power increasing rapidly. The benefits of the divine bridge were indeed endless. The exploration of the divine bridge came to an end. With a thought, Tang Zheng traversed millions of miles and circled around Fengdu. In the end, he landed in Fengdu City, which was bustling with noise and excitement. Even though he was standing in front of everyone, no one discovered his tracks. He stared at the scene in front of him and couldn't help but feel curious. He saw ghosts walking over from all directions under the watch of the ghost soldiers. They stopped in front of a huge black door. This door was too tall, almost as tall as the walls of Fengdu City. It made the surrounding buildings look exceptionally small. The black door was closed, and a group of elites of Fengdu guarded it. They guarded it strictly and didn't allow any ghosts to come close. The ghosts that were walking over were in a daze as they looked at the black door in a daze. Open the 9 underworlds ghost gate. Suddenly, a ghost soldier roared. The black door slowly opened, and a gust of chilly wind blew in, shrouding the area. Many ghost soldiers trembled as there was an aura in the chilly wind that terrified them. Even though they were ghost soldiers, they were still deeply afraid when they were in the midst of it. Tang Zheng frowned and stared straight at the 9 underworlds ghost gate. Behind this door was definitely the 9 underworlds, the true home of the ghosts. The chilly air that was coming from behind the door was terrifying even to the ghost soldiers, which showed how terrifying the 9 underworlds was. Tang Zheng didn't hesitate and walked toward the 9 underworlds ghost gate. The ghosts also neatly walked towards the 9 serenities ghost gate. Tang Zheng stood by the gate and watched the ghosts step into the gate one after another. Tang Zheng's gaze swept across each of the ghosts. Gradually he discovered something unusual. These ghost souls were actually incomplete. One of the 3 immortal souls and 7 mortal souls was missing a mortal soul. Tang Zheng widened his eyes in shock. He scanned the ghosts one by one to make sure that he wasn't mistaken. These ghosts were truly missing a part of their soul. There are numerous ghosts in Fengdu world, and I have also seen other ghosts. They all have 3 souls and 7 spirits. So why is it that the ghost that passes through the ghost gate of 9 underworlds is missing 1 spirit? Fengdu was a transit station for ghosts. Furthermore, Fengdu also intercepted a portion of ghosts and released the rest into the 9 underworlds. Without a doubt, these ghosts that were missing a part of their soul were the ghosts that had been released into the 9 underworlds. There was something fishy about this. Tang Zheng pondered for a moment, and it was not difficult for him to guess the truth. He clicked his tongue and praised, "Good method." The 9 underworlds and the god race are not on good terms, and the god race built Fengdu to intercept the ghosts of the 9 underworlds. This is a plan to remove the firewood from under the cauldron. But this is still not the most powerful part. His gaze landed on the dazed ghosts, and he sighed to himself. This is the truly most powerful and fatal part. Fengdu would extract a part of the soul from the ghosts that were sent to the 9 underworlds. These ghost souls were incomplete, so after they went to the 9 underworlds, the power of the 9 underworlds would be weakened. In the long run, the 9 underworlds would weaken while Fengdu would gradually grow stronger. TATSK. This was truly a good scheme. How sinister. Tang Zheng raised his head to look at the sky. The methods of the god race were clearly remarkable. Even if the 9 underworlds knew that there was something fishy about it, they could only pinch their noses and accept it. After all, the 9 underworlds had even tacitly approved of the sudden appearance of Fengdu. So how could they fall out over this matter? However, the 9 underworlds' heart was definitely overflowing with anger, and couldn't wait to deal with the god race ruthlessly. This is instead beneficial to me. This trip to the 9 underworlds is imperative, and it will definitely be very interesting. City Lord. Suddenly, the ghost soldiers knelt down to greet him and called out loudly in unison. Tang Zheng raised his head to look and saw the city lord of Fengdu walking over with large strides. There were quite a number of experts beside the city lord, and their auras were strong. It was obvious that they were experts from the world of Fengdu. Tang Zheng was standing in front of them, but these experts couldn't see him at all. Only the eyelids of the city lord twitched a few times when he saw Tang Zheng. The city lord swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Ever since Tang Zheng had left, he had been feeling uneasy. He didn't believe that Tang Zheng would really leave Fengdu. However, he didn't make it public. When the latest ghost was extradited to the 9 underworlds, he led his subordinates and swaggered over to inspect. He guessed that if Tang Zheng hadn't left, he definitely wouldn't have missed this opportunity. That was because from the information he had revealed that day, Tang Zheng would definitely be interested in the 9 underworlds. And the only chance to go to the 9 underworlds was on this day of extradition. Fengdu and the 9 underworlds had long agreed that the gate of the 2 worlds would open on a specific day to extradite the ghosts. At other times, the ghosts were restricted from traveling between the 2 worlds. As expected, when the city lord saw Tang Zheng, he was truly shocked. Luckily, he reacted quickly and didn't see any abnormal reactions from his subordinates. Only then did he realize that others couldn't see him. The city lord's heart was in a mess, and he looked at Tang Zheng without revealing anything. Tang Zheng smiled and said playfully, "Your Fengdu, or should I say the god race, really has good methods. You actually took away one of the souls of the ghosts. The ghosts that are going to the 9 underworlds are defective products, and you guys must have gone through strict selection. The strong practitioners of the ghosts have long been intercepted by you guys, right?" The city lord wasn't worried that his subordinates would hear Tang Zheng's words, but his heart jumped wildly. That was because Tang Zheng had seen through the God race's plan at a glance. He didn't reply, which could be considered a tacit agreement. For the God race to treat the 9 underworlds like this, the 9 underworlds must have complained a long time ago, but they didn't make a move or resist. It can only be said that the God race is powerful and the 9 underworlds are under their roof, so they have no choice but to lower their heads. If the 9 underworlds resist, I'm afraid the God race will be hard-pressed. Tang Zheng continued to talk non-stop. I'm going to the 9 underworlds this time to take a good look at this world. A world that has existed since the creation of the world is definitely different from the rest, but it's suppressed by the God race. It's truly a pity. All of this will definitely change. Tang Zheng said firmly. The city lord's face fell, and he looked even uglier than if he were crying. He could already foresee that the 9 underworlds would definitely stir up a storm, and Fengdu would be the first to bear the brunt of it. His good days were over. He couldn't help but feel a little regretful. It seemed that he had revealed too much information. Whether it was a blessing or a curse, he really couldn't say for sure. But when he thought of Tang Zheng's bold and visionary words, his heart couldn't help but surge. If that day really came, what did it matter if he took a little risk? Tang Zheng waved his hand at the city lord and said, "Goodbye, city lord. I believe we will meet again soon. During this period of time, you have to make good use of my power of belief. Don't disappoint me." The city lord subconsciously tightened his grip on the primordial wood bottle in his pocket. Tang Zheng strode into the 9 underworlds ghost gate. Suddenly, Chapter 1859. The violent Yin wind caused chaos in front of the 9th underworld ghost gate, and cries of alarm could be heard everywhere. What's going on? The Yin wind suddenly blew. What happened in the 9th underworld? Is the 9th underworld dissatisfied with us and trying to start a fight? All the generals were filled with righteous indignation. The city lord's pupils constricted as he shouted. The surroundings were silent, and the Yin wind also disappeared without a trace. It's so chaotic. What's the meaning of this? This is just a coincidence. There's no need to make a fuss. The city lord made the final decision. All the generals came to a realization. They believed in the city lord without a doubt, and were all relieved. Other than the city lord who saw the clues, the others did not know. This turmoil was caused by Tang Zheng. He was a living person, not a ghost, and only ghosts could pass through the 9th underworld ghost gate, which had strict restrictions. Tang Zheng used his own tyrannical strength to force his way through the 9th underworld ghost gate, which caused this turmoil. In the end, the 9th underworld ghost gate did not stop Tang Zheng. The 9th underworld, the final destination of ghosts. As Tang Zheng passed through the 9th underworld ghost gate, the power of a layer of space fluctuated, as if it wanted to push him out. With his understanding of the spatial laws, this was a piece of cake. With a slight use of his divine ability, he stood firmly in the 9th underworld. It was pitch black all around, and he could not see his fingers if he stretched out his hand. Tang Zheng's eyes widened in surprise. With his eyesight, he could not see anything at all. This was too inconceivable. However, there were ghosts flying past him, as if they were summoned by some mysterious power, and flew towards their destination on their own. Tang Zheng did not say a word and flew with the ghosts. However, he had not flown very far when he felt a wave of pressure. It was a pressure that came from all directions. With his cultivation, he could feel this pressure, which showed how terrifying it was. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been crushed by this pressure, and died without a complete corpse. Tang Zheng's heart trembled. This 9th underworld was indeed strange, to have such a terrifying pressure. However, in the end, this did not cause any substantial damage to Tang Zheng. On the other hand, the other ghosts did not feel this pressure and continued to fly unscathed. Tsk. Tang Zheng saw something. This pressure was clearly used to deal with outsiders. The 9 underworlds must be guarding against something, such as Fengdu and the God race. However, Fengdu was filled with ghosts, so this pressure wasn't of much use to them. That was to deal with the God race, but the God race was strong, so this pressure might not be able to cause any substantial harm to them. Tang Zheng racked his brains, but still couldn't figure out the mystery behind it. The darkness was boundless, and he didn't know how far he had flown. The first feeling that the 9 underworlds gave him was that it was vast, thousands of times bigger than Fengdu. Fengdu was like a small dot, while the 9 underworlds was the true giant. Now that the giant was nibbled away by the little guy, it made people sigh endlessly. Finally, a speck of light appeared in the distance. It was like a star in the sky. It floated in the air, and seemed to be moving. Tang Zheng was surprised. He rushed to the front of the ghosts and reached the light. Light. What floated in the sky were actually lights. They were like water lanterns used by the mortal world to convey the grief of their loved ones. They floated along the river and swam into the distance. These lanterns floated in the sky like a river of lights. They were majestic and stretched into the distance. There are actually souls in these lanterns. Tang Zheng focused his gaze and saw some clues. There was actually a soul in every lantern. These soul stones were complete souls, and not a single one was missing. There are also complete souls in the 9 underworlds. It seems like Fengdu's influence on the 9 underworlds is limited. The ghosts from Fengdu floated across the river of lights and continued forward. However, Tang Zheng became interested in the river of lights. The light from the lanterns could disperse the darkness and illuminate the surroundings of the river of lights. Tang Zheng's figure was also completely revealed. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The sound of water came from afar, and a ship sailed over from the other end of the river of lights. It was heading towards the direction of the lanterns. Even though there were no splashes, there was the sound of water wherever the ship passed. It was as though it was really moving forward in a huge river. Tang Zheng stood beside the river of lights and looked at the scene in astonishment. Suddenly, the ship stopped in front of him, and a tall figure walked to the bow of the ship and looked down at Tang Zheng. Where did you come from? Why are you not going to Yu City, but stopping in front of the river of lights? Tang Zheng raised his head and looked. He wasn't human, but seemed to be some kind of strange beast. There were horns on his head, and his face was like a withered tree. He was incomparably ugly, and one look at him would definitely wake him up from a nightmare. Where is Yu City? Tang Zheng didn't answer but asked instead. His articulation was clear, and his voice was like a large bell that resounded through the river of lights. Green smoke rose from the river of lights as though the souls in the water lanterns were affected, and were about to fly out of the water lanterns. There was a commotion on the ship, and angry shouts were heard. How dare you disturb the cycle of reincarnation? While they were talking, the bow of the ship was filled with tall figures. They all looked the same as before. More than 10 pairs of eyes looked over, and it was a different kind of soul-stirring. Tang Zheng's expression was indifferent. Instead, he said with interest, "Cycle of reincarnation? So these ghosts are going to cycle of reincarnation. A complete soul reincarnating is a fortunate thing for the humans of the God realm. It won't cause a congenital deficiency because of a missing soul." Hearing Tang Zheng's muttering, the group of strange beasts were stunned. Because Tang Zheng saw through the mystery with a glance, it was obvious that his origin was extraordinary. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Rays of divine light shot out from their eyes and intertwined into a huge beam of light that covered Tang Zheng. Immediately, there were cries of surprise. "You're not a ghost." After Tang Zheng entered the 9 underworlds, there was a lot of yin qi on his body as he flew, so the other party couldn't see that he wasn't a ghost at first glance. With this look, Tang Zheng exposed his identity. He admitted openly, "I'm indeed not a ghost but a living person." What? A living person came to the 9 underworlds? How is this possible? This has never happened in thousands of years. They screamed involuntarily, not daring to believe all this. From beginning to end, Tang Zheng didn't plan to hide his identity in the 9 underworlds. The 9 underworlds and the god race were enemies, not friends. If Tang Zheng wanted to gain something in the 9 underworlds, or even get the 9 underworlds to help him against the god race, then he wouldn't hide his identity openly. It wasn't a wise move. Could it be that you're a spy sent by the god race? A strong sense of hostility immediately surged from the ship, covering the sky and covering the earth. Tang Zheng was as unmoving as a pine tree, but those hostile intents were unable to approach him in the slightest. Tang Zheng was like a mainstay, splitting the hostile intents into two. How dare you attack us? The other party was angry, but there was fear in their words. A living person who came to the 9 underworlds, this was enough to explain everything. If the other party didn't have enough strength, they couldn't even cross the 9 underworlds Ghost Gate. And the only living people who could cross the 9 underworlds Ghost Gate were the subordinates of the god race. Whether they were friend or foe, it was clear at a glance. Of course, they wouldn't show the slightest bit of mercy. With a shout, the ship rushed forward like a fierce beast, crashing toward Tangzheng. Chapter 1860. The ship crashed into Tangzheng. Clang. With a loud bang, the sound of the ship falling apart rang out incessantly. In the blink of an eye, the ship had completely fallen apart and turned into ruins that filled the sky. Figures flew up from the ship one by one and stood high in the air, looking down in shock. They saw that Tangzheng was as still as a pine tree. He was still standing in the same spot as if he was fine. The ship had crashed into him with such a powerful force, but he was safe and sound while the ship fell apart. How terrifying was that? The strange beasts were stunned and seemed to have forgotten to vent their anger. They looked at Tangzheng blankly and stammered. You. Tangzheng sighed and said, "If I said that you were really mistaken and that I'm not of the god race or someone from Fengdu, would you believe me?" They looked at him with a gaze that said, "Don't treat me like an idiot." The meaning was self-evident. Tangzheng spread out his hands and said helplessly, "See, no matter what I say, you won't believe me. Then I can only use my method." "What method?" The strange beasts were at a loss and were at a loss. "My method is simple and crude, but it has always been effective." Tangzheng stretched out his hand and grabbed with his 5 fingers. A terrifying aura that covered the sky and covered the earth instantly enveloped this part of the world. The water lanterns stopped moving forward, and the strange beasts were horrified to find that they couldn't move. No matter how they used their skills to resist, it was futile. "What are you doing?" they asked in horror. Tangzheng said casually, "I said my method is effective, right?" The strange beasts finally accepted their fate and stopped struggling. They stared at Tangzheng. "I've just come to the 9 underworlds, so I'll let you be my guide and answer some of my questions," Tangzheng said without allowing them to refute. "You'll spoil the plan if you stop us. We're going to the reincarnation pool. If we miss the time, then all the efforts of these ghosts will be wasted, and they won't have the chance to reincarnate. Do you know how difficult it is for Lord Hades to gather these complete ghosts?" The strange beasts shouted with trembling voices. "Lord Hades." Tangzheng raised his eyebrows and was attracted by these 2 words. Of course, the other information also made him realize something. "Is this 9 Serenity's master the Netherlord?" Tangzheng asked. The exotic beast looked at him, as if he was an idiot. Was there even a need to ask such a question? Isn't it common sense that you are a spy sent by the Protoss? Why ask so many times? Tangzheng wasn't ashamed to ask. It seems so. The Netherworld Master is the 9 Underworlds Master, just like how the Fengdu Master is called the City Lord. He's an imitation of the 9 underworlds. When the strange beast heard the name of the Fengdu Necropolis Master, it flew into a rage. "Don't mention that scoundrel. He intercepted the souls of the 9 underworlds and extracted a part of their souls. He's trying to destroy the foundation of the 9 underworlds. He's extremely shameless." Tangzheng smiled since he could understand their thoughts. If the Necropolis Lord were to hear this, he wouldn't be able to refute it. What the City Lord has done is indeed worthy of this infamy. Tangzheng said fairly. The exotic beast looked at him blankly and was confused. Why was he still speaking up for them? This wasn't in line with their expectations. Tangzheng didn't explain much. He pointed at the Lantern River and said, "You spent a lot of energy to condense these souls, so they're very precious and can't be wasted. If you miss the time, you can't reincarnate, right?" The exotic beast hesitated for a moment and nodded. "That's right. Let's go to the reincarnation pool," Tangzheng said. He removed the energy and the Lantern River flowed into the distance again. Tangzheng had plenty of time and was full of curiosity about the 9 underworlds. Thus, he decided to calm down and take a good look. The reincarnation pool was in charge of reincarnation. This was a place he had to go to. He might as well go with the flow and go directly. Are you really going to the reincarnation pool? The exotic beast hurriedly asked when he saw Tangzheng following the Lantern River. They were also passively following him. Tangzheng pointed into the distance and said, "That's the truth. What else is there to doubt? Do you want to destroy the reincarnation pool?" An exotic beast asked whimsically. The other exotic beasts were shocked. They were about to scold him when they saw Tangzheng laugh. "I just want to take a look at the reincarnation pool." The exotic beasts were skeptical, but they had no choice but to lower their heads. No matter how they looked at Tangzheng, they couldn't change the current situation. They looked at each other. Instead, hope gradually grew in their eyes. The reincarnation pool was guarded by a large army and experts. This person was walking right into the trap. It would save them a lot of trouble. Thus, they all quieted down. Tangzheng acted as if he didn't see it and asked directly, "Are the complete souls in these water lanterns condensed from the incomplete souls?" The exotic beasts looked at each other, as if they didn't want to answer him. However, they didn't want to expose themselves. The best plan was to stabilize the enemy. As long as they reached the reincarnation pool, the situation would be settled. Thus, they answered truthfully, "Yes." In order to condense a complete soul, the Lord of the Netherworld needs to consume a large amount of remnant souls. Tangzheng thought carefully for a while. This must be done with great power. Even he couldn't do it. After the remnant souls condense a complete soul, there must be some left. What about the remaining remnant souls? Tangzheng hit the nail on the head and threw out another key question. The exotic beasts looked at him in surprise. They were shocked by his tricky question. Of course, after hearing this question, they became even angrier. They said bitterly, "The remaining remnant souls can only turn into soul fog." Soul fog. This was the first time Tangzheng heard this name. He asked, "What happens after they turn into soul fog?" "Then they're no longer souls. They'll be imprisoned in the sea of soul fog and can never be reincarnated." The exotic beasts' voices trembled. It was because of anger and also because of pain. Why is the soul fog imprisoned? The soul fog will cause great pressure and lead to a disaster. Tangzheng suddenly realized that the remaining remnant soul would actually cause such a serious aftereffect. The god race was truly killing two birds with one stone. Not only did they break the foundation of the 9 underworlds, they also left behind a huge disaster. Any one of them would cause the 9 underworlds to be in great danger and not be able to bear the consequences. Brilliant, really brilliant. I wonder who came up with this plan. In the sky, a huge lake appeared and floated in midair. The Lantern River converged towards this lake and flowed into it, stopping its advance. Is this the reincarnation pool? We're here. Tangzheng looked at the reincarnation pool curiously. However, before he could see any clues, figures flickered in the darkness. A large army suddenly appeared. They guarded the reincarnation pool and stared at Tangzheng, the uninvited guest. They also saw the exotic beasts that couldn't move and were shocked. They were secretly on guard. The exotic beasts were overjoyed and shouted, "This is a spy of the god race. Capture them quickly." Although they had already suspected that Tangzheng was a spy for the god clan along the way, at this moment, they still subconsciously shouted out. These 4 words were powerful and could attract hatred. Chapter 1861. The underworld army locked onto Tangzheng. Tangzheng calmly watched the army advance and leisurely strolled towards the army. As he walked, he said, "No matter what I say, you won't believe me. So, let's fight first and talk later." Tangzheng had figured out that the underworld believed in power. If he didn't defeat them, he wouldn't be able to communicate peacefully at all. Since that was the case, he would defeat them completely first. He glanced over. Although there were many enemies, he wasn't worried. Looking at him, he couldn't help but think of the 9 Serenities hell in the world of ghosts. That was the place where Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva cultivated in the world of ghosts. He wanted to empty that hell before he could become a Buddha. In the end, he succeeded. That underworld hell was different from the real underworld world. Only the names were similar. The underworld world was much more powerful than the underworld hell. There was no comparison between the two. His thoughts drifted back. He saw that the army was already in front of him. Rays of light flew out from the army. These were the rays of light from treasures. They all shot toward Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng looked up. With just a glance, these attacks all missed and froze in midair. They couldn't move forward anymore. Just a glance had such divine power. It completely shocked the enemy. Immediately, they believed that Tang Zheng was a spy of the god race. Because, in this world, only the god race had such means. Kill. Suddenly, uniform shouts resounded through the world. A giant stood out from the army. This giant stood tall, and looked down on all living things. Even Tang Zheng looked insignificant in front of him. Tang Zheng looked at the giant. This giant also had 2 horns on his head, but he had a human face. He didn't know if he was a human or a beast. He stretched out his hand. The air in the sky quickly gathered and formed a huge drum in front of him. This drum covered an area of several hundred feet. It covered the sky and floated in midair. There was a commotion in the army. Cheers thundered. It seemed that their confidence had increased by a lot when they saw this drum. The underworld drum sounds, all things move. The underworld drum sounds, 10,000 souls break. Roars came out from the giant's mouth. Then he used his fist as a drumstick and hit the underworld drum hard. Bang! The sound of the drum reverberated. Heaven and earth moved, and all living things moved. A shockwave accurately attacked Tang Zheng from the 9 Serenities drum, but it didn't cause any damage to the army. This kind of precise attack made Tang Zheng's eyes light up. Interesting indeed. Tang Zheng leaped high above the 9 Netherworld drum and looked down, facing the giant face to face. His gaze fell on the 9 Netherworld drum, only to see saint inscriptions appear on it. These saint inscriptions were neat and uniform, but there were a total of 4 saint inscriptions, which was more than the hidden sword. So it is a sacred artifact. Ahaha. My hidden sword is also a sacred artifact. It is more than enough to break your sacred artifact, Tang Zheng said with a chuckle. He raised the sword of Xuanzang. Suddenly, the sword light illuminated the reincarnation pool. The light from the water lamps was completely covered by the sword light. All that was left in their eyes was the dazzling sword light, like the scorching sun. Whoosh! He slashed at the 9 Serenities drum. The 9 Serenities drum sounded again. Tang Zheng's soul moved. He was startled and stopped in midair. His hands hesitated for a moment. This sound of the drum seemed to really want to shatter his soul. A sacred artifact that specializes in attacking souls is really extraordinary. Tang Zheng licked his lips and recovered from the shock. His hands no longer hesitated. Whoosh! A crack appeared in the sky. It was the mark of the hidden sword flying past. The sky cracked, the sound of the drum stopped, and the world returned to normal. Bang! The giant flew out. The 9 Serenities drum lost its master's control and gradually dissipated. It was like clouds gathering and dispersing, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. This 9 Serenities drum is a bit interesting. It doesn't seem to have a physical body. It was completely transformed by the giant. This is worth learning. My hidden sword hasn't changed much. It has always been a sword. If it can change into other forms, perhaps its power will be even greater. Tang Zheng was excited and suddenly had an idea. However, this idea firmly occupied his mind. He could not wait to test it out. He suppressed the hundreds of ideas in his mind and looked at the stunned 9 Serenities army. He said, "Can we have a proper discussion now?" The army began to whisper. "That is King Guyu. He has boundless strength and invincible divine might. How could he be defeated by him? Moreover, he did not take advantage of the victory to pursue and kill King Guyu. Isn't he missing a good opportunity?" The 9 Serenities army was made up of elites. They had unique insight and naturally saw many clues. After some analysis, they found more problems. Pairs of eyes swept across Tang Zheng. He did not move and allowed these eyes to size him up. He did not care about his secrets being exposed. Whoosh! King Guyu flew back and looked down at Tang Zheng. His voice was like the sound of a drum. He asked, You are not a spy of the divine race. Who are you? Tang Zheng looked at him and said, Of course I am not a spy of the divine race. I am an outsider. I heard about the matters between the divine race and the 9 serenities. I was curious, so I came to the 9 serenities to take a look. I did not expect to meet them. They did not believe me, so I could only use this method. I defeated them first, and then came to the reincarnation pool. Tang Zheng's gaze landed on the reincarnation pool. He said, I heard that there is a time limit to the reincarnation pool. If we miss the time, all our previous efforts will be wasted. There are so many souls that need to be reincarnated. This is the main thing. Why don't I watch you guys activate the reincarnation pool first? I will be a quiet spectator. What do you think? Tang Zheng was neither fast nor slow. He was neither servile nor overbearing. This made King Guyu look at him in a new light. He said, You are indeed not like those shameless people of the divine race. Your divine arts are not bad. You can actually fight against me. I am not even afraid of god monarchs, but I actually lost to you. What is your cultivation level? King Guyu looked at Tang Zheng curiously, but he could not see through him. Tang Zheng seemed to have a halo around him. It was also like a layer of fog that blocked his probing gaze. My cultivation level is equivalent to god monarch. Actually, your abilities are very strong. I was lucky to have won against you. Tang Zheng said humbly. He cultivated the heavenly god technique and built the divine bridge. His cultivation level was not something the divine race of the same level could compare to. King Guyu snorted and said, Victory is victory. Defeat is defeat. I lost to you, but this is not shameful. I will defeat you again in the future. Tang Zheng smiled and said, You are honest and upright. I like it. Haha, I like you too. King Guyu said gruffly. Then you can watch from the side as we activate the reincarnation pool. All right. Tang Zheng did not disturb the other party. Although this battle came and ended quickly, he gained a lot. He was able to fight with a true expert of the 9 underworlds. This made his blood boil. Chapter 1862. A wave surged in the reincarnation pool. The wave gathered and turned into a whirlpool. The thousands of water lamps that flowed into the reincarnation pool gathered here and moved closer to the center of the whirlpool. Tang Zheng opened his eyes wide as he quietly watched this magical scene unfold before him. Whoosh! A water lamp rushed into the whirlpool, and a pillar of light shot up into the sky from the center of the whirlpool like a laser. It shot into the sky and did not dissipate. Following that, water lamps rushed into the whirlpool one by one. Pillars of light pierced through the reincarnation pool, as if they were going to pierce through the heavens. They were like indomitable trees that supported the heavens and the earth, supporting this part of the sky. King Guyu controlled the reincarnation pool, without saying a word. He glanced at Tang Zheng from the corner of his eyes, and saw that he was watching very seriously without saying a word. King Guyu hesitated and said, Reincarnation pool is not complicated. However, there is a specific moment when the reincarnation pool can be activated. The most important part of the reincarnation pool is the soul. Since you are from the outside world, you naturally know about the crimes that the divine clan has committed against the 9 underworlds. Extracting a soul is their evil deed. When he said this, the 9 underworlds' army's aura was filled with anger. It was as if they could explode at any time. Tang Zheng said calmly, That is true. This is really an evil deed. King Guyu said with relief, Those who know the inside story all think so. Then why don't you resist? This is the act of destroying your foundation. It is too vile. How can you just let it be? Tang Zheng asked, hitting the nail on the head. King Guyu sighed and said, It's not that we don't want to resist. However, Lord Yu is kind and does not want the people in the world to suffer the chaos of war. That's why we keep delaying it. Ha! This reason was out of Tang Zheng's expectations. Although he had never seen Lord Yu before, he was after all the lord of this world. No matter if it was in terms of vision or spirit, he was definitely unparalleled. How could he not resist just because of this reason? This reason could not convince Tang Zheng. However, he did not ask for the reason. Instead, he chose to listen and watch. He said calmly, Lord Yu is kind. More and more light pillars appeared on the reincarnation pool. After a while, when all the water lamps entered the whirlpool, the reincarnation pool had turned into a huge light pillar and was completely enveloped. Whoosh! Suddenly, a saint rune flew out from the center of the whirlpool and floated high in the air. The saint rune's light wasn't very eye-catching, but it overshadowed the huge pillar of light. Saint inscriptions? Tang Zheng looked at this scene in surprise. His hidden sword was a saint artifact, so he had a better understanding of saint inscriptions. When he saw this saint inscription, his heart trembled, and his eyes were completely attracted by it. This is the saint rune of a saint artifact. Moreover, this saint artifact only has one saint rune. Tang Zheng quietly analyzed. His hidden sword also had more than one saint pattern, but it was already an extraordinary treasure that could help him kill his enemies. Now this saint artifact only had one saint rune. The great Tao was simple to the extreme. When Tang Zheng saw the sacred inscription, he was deeply shocked. He quickly asked, "What kind of magic treasure's sacred inscription is this?" The saint runes swam around the light pillar, and the light pillar slowly broke away from the vortex and flew into the sky. The saint rune kept protecting the light pillar until the saint rune disappeared into the horizon. Suddenly, there was a flash of light, and the saint runes returned, silently falling into the reincarnation pool. Everything was calm, and only the enormous reincarnation pool that spanned across heaven and earth floated in the air, silently telling everyone what had just happened. When everything was settled, King Guyu had the time to answer Tang Zheng's question. He pointed at the reincarnation pool and said, "This saint rune belongs to the reincarnation pool." Reincarnation pool? Tang Zheng was shocked. This reincarnation pool that covered the sky was actually a magic treasure, a saint artifact that was even more powerful than the hidden sword. Tang Zheng inwardly exclaimed in admiration. This was truly out of his expectations. If the reincarnation pool is a saint artifact, then wouldn't it be taken away by others? If someone stole the reincarnation pool, then their reincarnation project would really be ruined. Tang Zheng's words were shocking. Ha ha ha. Meaningful laughter rang out from the Nine Nether army, as if they didn't agree and were worried about his words. The reincarnation pool is a saint artifact that belongs to the Nine Nether. Who can take it away? That person hasn't been born yet. No, there will never be such a person. King Guyu said resolutely. Tang Zheng was enlightened and said, "Since no one can take it away, then everything is fine. Otherwise, the Nine Nether will be in danger." After a pause, Tang Zheng pointed at the calm reincarnation pool and asked, "Has the reincarnation cycle ended?" King Guyu nodded. "It has ended. Since you have come to the Nine Nether, you must have your own purpose. What is your purpose?" King Guyu went straight to the point, and Tang Zheng didn't need to be courteous. Tang Zheng said directly, "I want to meet the Nine Nether Master." "Then what identity are you using to meet the Nether Master?" King Guyu asked. "I am representing another world to the Nine Nether. You may not have heard of this world, but that is not important. What is important is that I am here," Tang Zheng said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. "Another world?" King Guyu's eyes lit up, and he was overjoyed. A playful smile appeared on his huge face as he stared at Tang Zheng, and asked, "You are the legendary person from the lower realm?" Tang Zheng smiled bitterly. It seemed that everyone had misunderstood him and Yuanying's doppelganger. Yuanying's doppelganger's influence was not small, and even the Nine Nether knew about it. In other words, the Nine Nether had many spies, and was well informed. Whatever happened in the God realm could not be hidden from the Nine Nether, and whatever mysterious person appeared in the God realm could not be hidden from the Nine Nether. In that case, didn't it mean that the Nine Nether had not accepted his fate, and was continuously collecting information about the God realm, and slowly plotting, or one day, it would come in handy? This was exactly what Tang Zheng wanted. He was really afraid that the Nine Nether Master had no desires, and that would make things difficult for him. "It's me," Tang Zheng admitted openly. Yuanying came out of his body, and was equivalent to a part of him, so it was not completely wrong for him to admit it like this. King Guyu's eyes kept rolling around Tang Zheng's body as he clicked his tongue in admiration. You made such a big commotion. You have already attracted the attention of the God clan. Now that you have come to the Nine Nether, won't you have attracted the wrath of the God race? Tang Zheng's expression froze. He had never thought about this problem. He was not surprised and said casually, the wrath of the God race has already reached the Nine Nether, and it's burning their buttocks. The attention that I have attracted is nothing. It has nothing to do with the big picture. King Guyu agreed with what Tang Zheng said, or rather, the Nine Nether had too many lice on its head, and it was not afraid of the God race coming to find trouble. Chapter 1863. Yudu was the capital of 9 underworlds, the center of power of 9 underworlds. It was equivalent to Fengdu. Yudu occupied an extremely vast area, and there were even mountain ranges that rose and fell continuously in the city. It was hard to tell if the mountain was in the city or if the city was in the mountain. The sky of 9 underworlds was dark, but the sky of Yudu was bright like daytime. However, there was no sun, moon, or stars. It was as if a white canopy covered the 9 heavens. The sky gave off light that shone on Yudu and chased away the darkness. Tang Zheng and King Guyu returned to Yudu together. The group was majestic and stretched endlessly. These were the elites under King Guyu. King Guyu had quite a bit of power in the 9 underworlds, and was in charge of guarding the pool of reincarnation. Reincarnation pool was extremely important to 9 underworlds. So since he was guarding it, his position and abilities could be seen clearly. They flew through the air, and King Guyu and Tang Zheng directly flew through the gate of Yudu. As for the other subordinates, they landed and passed through the gate in an orderly manner. Seeing the curiosity on Tang Zheng's face, King Guyu introduced, in Yudu City, only the king of Yudu can fly. You are an esteemed guest of the 9 underworlds, so you naturally have the status of an esteemed guest. Therefore, you can travel with me. Tang Zheng nodded his head in understanding and looked down at Yudu. He revealed an astonished expression and asked, how big is this Yudu exactly? King Guyu said proudly, the size of Yudu can't be measured. In short, you just need to know that it is very, very big. Tang Zheng clicked his tongue secretly and said, there are restrictions in Yudu that specifically target flying, right? King Guyu praised, as expected of someone who has cultivated to God, your discerning eyes are like torches. Tang Zheng was astonished. Flying in Yudu above one's level would definitely bring about terrifying attacks. With Tang Zheng's cultivation, he might not be able to defend against them. Maybe this was also a way to deal with the God race. If the God race wanted to attack Yudu, they could only attack from the land. If they wanted to attack from the celestial palace, it would be as difficult as ascending to heaven. Yudu's territory was vast, and if the God race really wanted to take it down, it was unknown how long they would have to drag out the battle line, and how much manpower they would have to invest. There was a deep meaning behind this. Tang Zheng's gaze flickered, and he sighed ruefully in his heart. He was full of admiration for Yudu's arrangement. After a moment, the two of them flew to the tallest mountain in Yudu. The mountain was indomitable, piercing straight into the sky. This mountain was pitch black and emitted a cold and gloomy aura. Inchi lingered around it like clouds and mist, covering half of the mountain peak, making it look mysterious. This is the underworld mountain where the secluded Nether Lord resides. I have already informed the secluded Nether Lord. He is currently waiting for you on the underworld mountain. King Guyu said. Tang Zheng was filled with anticipation as he said, thank you King Guyu for your help. We wouldn't have known each other if we didn't fight. Moreover, you have an extraordinary status. When Lord Yu wants to see you, he will definitely have many questions to ask you. King Guyu didn't want to claim credit for himself, but continued to analyze the situation. Tang Zheng had already made preparations. Both parties flew to the peak of the underworld mountain. A magnificent palace stood at the peak of the underworld mountain, looking extremely magnificent. However, after Tang Zheng took a few more glances, his eyes widened in surprise. This palace wasn't built with bricks and tiles. Instead, it was formed by Yin Qi. Yet it looked corporeal and was no different from a real building. Tang Zheng exclaimed in astonishment. What a great divine art. King Guyu guessed what he was thinking and said proudly, "This is a palace formed by the secluded Nether Lord executing a great divine art. It has been standing here for God knows how many years. It is even older than me." Impressive. Tang Zheng gave a thumbs up and praised from the bottom of his heart. "Esteemed guest, you flatter me." A vigorous voice came from the palace. Tang Zheng felt his vision blur, and they were already standing in the palace. Tang Zheng looked around and realized that he hadn't moved. It was the palace that had moved and covered them. Therefore, they had arrived in the palace. This palace wasn't simple. Lord Yu was even more so. Tang Zheng had already seen Lord Yu. He had a human face, but there were 2 horns on his head. He was incomparably tall, but he sat in the palace like a mountain. He was so tall that it was hard to look at his back. Lord Yu's eyes were extremely large. They were like 2 bright lamps hanging high in the sky. It was as if he could see through people's hearts. Tang Zheng bowed to Lord Yu and said, "Greetings, Lord Yu." Hades' sovereign looked at Tang Zheng. It was as if all of Tang Zheng's secrets were exposed to Hades' sovereign's gaze. Tang Zheng's expression was calm. He didn't use any arts to resist and just looked at Lord Yu quietly. Lord Yu was looking at him. He was also looking at Lord Yu. They observed each other carefully. After a while, they both retracted their gazes. "Esteemed guest, are you from another world?" Lord Yu asked. Tang Zheng nodded. "Yes. My world is too weak compared to the immortal world and the 9 underworlds." This was the truth. The mortal world was more prosperous than the immortal world and the 9 underworlds. However, this prosperity was just an illusion. It wasn't as stable as the primitive scenery of these 2 worlds. These 2 worlds had true elites who could protect themselves. Therefore, even if other enemies had designs on them or threatened them, they could still protect their own worlds. But to the mortal world, there were too few elites. This caused the mortal world to be weak and unable to resist the invasion of powerful enemies. Lord Yu said in a low voice, "There are many large and small worlds in the universe. Although your world is weak, it has produced a great expert like you. This already shows its potential. In time, your world will become stronger and stronger." Tang Zheng nodded in agreement. However, he changed the topic and said, "But my world is facing too great a crisis. Once the immortal world descends, it will be a disaster." Immortal world. Lord Yu muttered softly. "The immortal world absorbs the power of faith from your world and feeds it back to the immortal world. Your world is the nourishment of the immortal world. To the immortal world. Your world is indeed too weak and insignificant. This is because the immortal world has too many worlds that can replace your world." Tang Zheng's heart trembled. He originally thought that the mortal world was the only source of power of faith for the immortal world. He didn't expect the immortal world to control so many worlds. Tang Zheng didn't say a word. He silently agreed with Lord Yu's words. Lord Yu continued, "You're here to find a way to break this, right?" "Yes." Tang Zheng didn't mince his words. "The immortal world is high and mighty. I want to pull them down from their altar. Only then will my world be safe. Moreover, it will be done once and for all." What a great ambition. Lord Yu praised. "Unfortunately, it's almost impossible." "Why?" "My conflict with the immortal world is deeper than yours. I also want to pull them down from their altar. I've tried, but I failed in the end. I was born from heaven and earth and have great divine abilities. However, I still can't shake the immortal world's position. Do you think you can succeed?" The moment Lord Yu finished speaking, an earth-shattering power that caused one's soul to tremble enveloped him. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.